and to complete a pre-conference survey. As you're coming in and as your early birds, as we're getting started, if you will come in and visit us at AAHTFevents.com and complete the survey. You'll click on the survey link and complete the survey. So we'll be super excited to get that information from you. Welcome as you're coming in from all over the state of Florida, all over the country. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a part of this extraordinary experience on today. Thank you for being a part of this extraordinary experience on today. And as you see, we have a lot of people buzzing in right now. I'm just excited seeing my numbers grow. I'm just excited seeing my numbers grow as each of you join us for this occasion. Again, as you're coming in, feel free to visit us at AAHTFevents.com and complete the survey. Complete the survey, and that's going to give us an opportunity to find out where you are as it relates to what's going on here in the state of Florida with our African American History Task Force and all the things that we are trying to do to ensure that the history of African Americans and African peoples are taught within the curriculum in our school districts. You're going to learn a lot about that on today, a great deal, but we want to know where you are right now. So again, if you will please go to the website and take that survey. As you're coming in, I know you see multiple panelists, our guests on the screen, and when we officially get started at 12 o'clock on the dot, we're going to ensure that we introduce our panelists on today. And again, thank you for joining us. We're going to give you the opportunity to come in. And remember, as you're coming in, I would love for you to tell us where you're logging in from. And I have another thing I want you to do. As you're logging in, if you can chat us one word that describes how you are feeling at this moment as you're logging into this historic 2020 African American History Task Force Summer Institute. This promises to be an amazing professional development experience, one that you've never participated in before. And so we are excited to know how you're feeling as you're coming in. So if you can just chat us one word that describes how you are feeling on today, that describes how you are feeling on today. You see a group of excited educators on the screen. As you're coming in, you see a group of excited educators on the screen, and we are ready to lead and guide you through this extraordinary experience. As you're coming in, please visit AAHTFevents.com and let's take the pre-conference survey. That gives us an opportunity to know where you are because we know where we're going to take you. So we would be excited if you would take a moment to complete that survey. We would be excited if you would take a moment to chat us a hello and give us one word that describes how you're feeling this moment as you begin to enter into this Summer Institute. If I were chatting, now I'm talking to you all right now, so I really can't chat. But if I were chatting, I would say I am excited with an exclamation point. I would say I'm excited about the opportunity that we're about to share in together. So you're joining us from different places across the country, different schools, different districts. We also know that we know and we understand that technology happens so that there are many of us that are still trying to get the hang of it. We're still trying to get the hang of it. But we can always visit AAHTFevents.com, and that always logs us right back in, even if we get kicked out. So again, thank you for joining us today. We have our numbers growing as we speak, and it is the noon hour. It is the noon hour, and again, welcome to the African American History Task Force 2020 Virtual Summer Institute. We are excited that you're here. My name is Roxy Hall. I'm a senior partner with Vanguard Solutions Consulting, and we have had the extraordinary honor to be able to serve as the virtual meeting planner for this event, as well as moderate this experience for you on today. So I'm excited to be here. We're honored to be here at this critical and pivotal time in our nation's history. And what I would like to do this moment is to introduce you to our guests that are on the call, and they will be our panelists for today. They will be our speakers for today, and they will be with us throughout this experience. We have Dr. Bernadette Kelly. She is our principal investigator for the African American History Task Force events. And this actually, she's done amazing things working with the state of Florida to institute this amazing and prolific, this task force. And in the state of Florida, again, we are one of the only states in this country that has a task force that is designed quite like the one we have here. And so kudos to Dr. Kelly for what she's done, that her gifted mind and her desire to ensure that the history of African Americans and our people will be integrated into the curriculum across the state. So thank you, Dr. Kelly. You can chat her, you can give her flowers through the chat and say, thank you, Dr. Kelly. Then we also will have the chairman of the task force, and that is former Senator Tony Hill. He's known throughout the state of Florida as well as the country for the powerful contributions that he has made to society as a whole. So we're going to hear a lot more from Senator Hill as we get going. So again, thank you, Senator Hill, for all of the things that you do in your hard work. We're going to introduce you to another task force member. That's Dr. Matty Yoon, and he's doing some amazing things with archives and museums in the state of Florida. I am excited to hear more about what he has to tell us on today. I'm also going to introduce to you Dr. Donna Austin. She's there in Tallahassee, and Dr. Austin is going to explain this African American History Task Force to us and give us valuable information and tools so that we will know exactly what it is that we are embarking upon today. Then I'm going to introduce to you Dr. Tamara Gibson, who's coming to us, and she works for the Florida Department of Education. She will be introducing herself fully to you. And as we're dealing at this unprecedented time in America, there are some things that we're dealing with as it relates to COVID-19 and how it's impacting us in health. Dr. Tamara Gibson is going to give us some great information and tools to help us navigate the journey. Then we have Dr. Andrea Oliver, who we will hear a lot from on day 3, but she is also the person that's going to be our major evaluator in this, looking at the data and assessment based on this experience that we're having and the things that the Institute is doing across the state of Florida. As I speak about Dr. Oliver, I want to take you back and make this announcement once again. If you visit us at AAHTF events, that's African American History Task Force events, the acronym, .com, we're going to ask you to click on the survey link in order to take a pre-conference survey. It's very important that you take that survey because the data that we gather makes an impact on what it is we're trying to do in the state of Florida to ensure our mission and our goals are accomplished. So Dr. Oliver will be taking that data and evaluating it so that we can educate on purpose. Can you get excited about educating on purpose? When we do things on purpose, it makes a difference. And so we want you to help us by going to that survey link on your website and actually taking that survey now. So if you can multitask, which I know most of us in this virtual world, Dr. Gibson, we know how to multitask, right? So if you can multitask, we're going to ask you to do that. However, we also have a powerful app that the Summer Institute has invested largely in for us to be able to connect with each other and interact with each other. We have some folk that are doing a lot of interacting. And so we're going to be giving out some prizes. As a matter of fact, I think it's, I sent it in the actual e-blast earlier, but we have one young lady who has logged, I think, 96,000 points or something like that, Senator Hill, and she has won an official African American History Task Force Summer Institute t-shirt, compliments of VSC. So we will be sending her an Institute t-shirt at the end of the conference. In second place, I can't remember her name, but I bet I'm gonna get back to you with it. She will be winning a digital copy of one of Dr. Akua's books. So what is that saying to you? How many of you like prizes, right? If you participate in the app, if you get to know each other, if you ask questions, if you create posts, if you upload pictures, if you make comments, you're going to build up points. So you're going to benefit just as a result of your communicating and connecting with your speakers, with your fellow attendees. That's going to be your bonus anyway. That's going to be your bonus anyway, Dr. Austin. But we all like prizes. You also will have the opportunity to win some great prizes, and we'll be talking more about that throughout the experience. And also, I want to introduce to you our keynote speaker for today. And in a little bit, there will be no need for introduction. After you meet Dr. Rudy Jameson, he's coming to us from University of North Florida. And as I said, he is going to give you more information about himself and what he's doing. But you just hold on to your seats, because we're going to have Senator Hill get us started off. And we're going to have Dr. Jameson end us on an extraordinary high. So we are very excited that you are here. I'm excited to serve as your moderator through this experience. I'm honored to be a part of this experience. And so I'm just going to give you a little bit of information. I am right now on the African American History Task Force Summer Institute main webpage. So be sure to actually copy that, visit us at AAHTFevents.com, and you can find all information Summer Institute on this particular website. We found ourselves at an unprecedented time in this country. We find ourselves at a moment of crisis as it relates to COVID-19, at a moment of crisis in many ways as we're dealing with some of the social circumstances that we are encountered with right now in our country. So many of us might feel a little disheartened, confused, and a little fatigued based on where we are for many reasons. But there's also some reason to be excited. There's some reason to be excited because we're at a point that we are a part of history, Dr. Oliver. We are a part of history because of the things that we can do to make an impact in this country on so many levels. So I don't know about you, but I can get excited about that. If you can get excited about that, if I have somebody in this space that can get excited about that, I want you to chat about it. I want you to tell me that, hey, Roxy, I can get excited. I can get excited about equipping myself with knowledge to make a difference. I can get excited about learning so that I can impact my community. I can get excited about making a change and making a difference. I can get excited about working collectively and collaboratively with people around me to make an impact on my community and in my society, and thereby in my country. So if you can get excited about that, that's what civic engagement is all about. That's what civic engagement is all about. And that's what this conference is all about. So let me talk a little bit, and Dr. Kelly, I don't want to get this stuff wrong because it's so important that you understand and know what this task force is all about. So this task force is an advocate for Florida school districts and teacher education centers and the community at large, all of us, in implementing the teaching of the history of African peoples and the contributions of African Americans to society. We are an essential part of the fabric of this society. And every single African American in this country brings power and strength just by the virtue of our experience, if you can get excited about that. So all of us together collectively, no matter what our diverse background is, can get excited about learning more about these contributions. And knowledge is what? Y'all know the word, power. And so with this, we are going to be powerful. And we're going to be powered up and ready to grow. The Summer Institute assists the task force in its mission to ensure awareness of the requirements, identify and recommend needed state education leadership action, and assist in the adoption of instructional materials by the state and build supporting partnerships. It's critical, it's essential. And if you want things to happen, you have to make them happen. We are seeing this as people across this country are participating in civic engagement by peacefully protesting and demanding rights that should be inherent already. That's civic engagement on steroids, right? So we're excited. And I was talking to Dr. Kelly, and I want to thank Dr. Kelly for her foresight. Dr. Kelly had the foresight to get together with this task force and bring forth the theme this year. What has happened in this country had not happened when Dr. Kelly came up and she was given, and I know she believes she was given this theme for a certain reason and by a certain reason, but she was given this theme. And look at how this theme is so necessary and critical to us where we are. How many of you need some tools? How many of you need some support? How many of you need some understanding and guidance? How many of you on this call right now, text it to me. Text it to us so we can make you accountable. How many of you want to use the education and information you glean and gain from this experience in order to make a positive impact on the students and the educators that you serve? If you sincerely want to make an impact, say, I do. If you sincerely want to make an impact, say, I want to learn more to make an impact. Talk about, you have to be prepared to learn. What are you bringing to the table? What do you want to gain? And let's chat about it. Let's chat about it. So our speakers, our presenters, we will be asking you to engage. We know this virtual world is a different place, right? We know it's different. So we're going to do all that we can to keep you engaged. And you already see, you know, this energy that you feel with me right now, it's just real. I'm telling you. So you're going to have it all day. So don't step away, because if you step away, you don't know what you might miss, right? You don't know what you might miss. Again, thank you. Thank you for giving me the privilege to be a part of your day. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to guide you through this experience. Dr. Kelly, Senator Hill, and the task force, thank you for entrusting VSC with such an important task, such an important and critical task here as we are faced with unprecedented times, as we are faced with challenges, but as we are faced, Dr. Gibson, with opportunity, as we're faced with opportunity to make a difference. So now I want to present to you, again, an amazing man who is doing things throughout this state, who is himself a part of the state's history, and who has a message to share with us on this morning. And that is in the person of former Senator Tony Hill. Hello, Mr. Hill.
Hello. And thank you so much, Ms. Hall, for facilitating this great series of events starting today and going through the 17th, June 15th through the 17th. We are deliciously excited about being with you today. Normally when I'm speaking to a group, I'm standing up, so I'm going to say that I sit with tippy-toe anticipation, not stand with tippy-toe anticipation of what's going to happen in these next few days. As we open up this Summer Institute, I think this is our 7th of 8 institute here in the state of Florida, where we bring educators from around the state to implement the African American History Task Force here in the state of Florida. With some 25 plus years of being in existence, when we first passed this in the Florida House of Representatives and moved it on to the Senate, and now it's in the Florida statutes. Just for a point of reference, Dr. Koo, who is going to be speaking with us, approached the Institute by way of his dissertation on his doctorate. And so we are really excited about hearing his presentation today. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have heard the different events of African American history as we go into Juneteenth this week, but also here in the state of Florida on the 27th of August, we will be celebrating 60th anniversary of the Axe Handle Saturday, which was an event here in Jacksonville, Florida. So we're going to be excited about that event, even though there's another convention that is going to be going on at the same time. But the notoriety of that day has grown viral across the country. We thank the board members who are on board here today, and you will be hearing from them. I wanted to give a special shout out to Dr. Kelly, who has been leading us for the 20 plus years that we've been in existence. And also wanted to thank Dr. Menu, who allowed us some few months ago, late February, to exhibit the 120th anniversary of Lift Every Voice and Sing, which was originated right here in Florida in a little town called Jacksonville, Florida. Those two brothers, James Welton Johnson, and of course his brother Johnson, that wrote and broadcast the lyrics of Lift Every Voice and Sing. So we hope and pray that you will take some nuggets from this Summer Institute. We hope you can take it back. As I looked at the greetings that came across the screen from Indiana, Louisiana, from Georgia, from New York, I hope the speakers will really whet your appetite for you to dig in deeper in your own state and ask your state representatives that you need an African American History Task Force in your state. Again, Ms. Hall, we want to thank you for facilitating this event. We want to thank you for pulling all us together, and we look forward to the speakers, and we look forward to a prosperous conference. And again, thank you so very much for allowing me the opportunity to come and speak.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Now, if you all noticed on the program, Senator Hill had quite a bit of time. And I thought Senator Hill was going to talk a little longer, but I think Dr. Gibson might be excited about that, because she has a whole lot that she wants to talk to you about. So look at how it works, Dr. Gibson, right?
Look, that's the truth, Roxy.
Look at how that works. Thank you so much, Senator Hill. Again, we're going to talk so much about the ways that we can make an impact. And what's always so exciting to me is when we find out and learn all those things. There's so much you can learn about history here in our state. We've made so much history in this state, and we're excited about that. And we, again, like I said, knowledge is power. I had the opportunity to spend some time with Dr. Oliver in another session, another series that we're working on with our nonprofit. We have a women's empowerment organization, and we're trying to, Dr. Gibson, equip women with knowledge so that we can maximize what we call our she power. And so we learn so much about the contributions of women in our country. And so then thereby African-American women. But history is relevant and it teaches us and it equips us if we utilize it properly. And so now I'm going to introduce Dr. Tamara Gibson, who has some extra time. And she probably, I don't know, maybe she paid off Senator Hill and told him she's gonna do lunch or something for him. But Dr. Gibson.
All right, thank you very much, Roxy. I appreciate that welcome, and it feels very good to be here. Peace to you all. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Tamara Gibson Alonso. I'm the Health Education Coordinator with the Office of Healthy Schools at the Florida Department of Education. And I work in the Bureau of Standards and Instructional Support with the Social Studies Department, as well as other content areas that many of you, as evidenced in the chat, work in those content areas. I see there's English teachers here. We have some math teachers and professors, and it's nice to see that cross-curriculum connection to this very important topic of civic engagement. I myself am a health and science teacher. That's my background. I have a master's in public health and a doctorate in ed leadership, a minor in biology. So I taught in Florida for about 13 years in Duval, Miami-Dade, and Osceola, quite a few years in between, as well as held leadership roles within those districts as well. It's an honor to be here. And I thank you very much for spending the next, I'll push it to 30 minutes. I had 25, but there's a little kind of icing on the cake I'll put on top of my presentation. If time allows, I'll say we'll do about 30 minutes, add 5 minutes to it. Is that okay with you, Roxy? I'm sure it will be. All right, so on your screen, you see that there's a Florida statute listed, 1003.42. And this is the Florida statute for required instruction. My office, Healthy Schools, focus on N. However, the work of the task force and the state mandated requirement in Florida to teach African and African American history is also in this required instruction statute. It's either G or H. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that connection, and we'll talk about it throughout the next half an hour together as well. My email's there on the screen too, so if you want N number, if you want to follow up with me afterwards, you have questions, you could take a screenshot here, or we could follow up in the Hoover app as well. All right, so this is a very creative image with a lot of profound meaning. As educators, we hear a lot about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. We hear a lot about the trauma that our students face, not just students, but the trauma that we face and suffering. Throughout this presentation, you'll see many links. Those blue hyperlinks, looks like a chain. And I wish I could spend on each of the 15 slides that I have here, I could spend easily 25 minutes on each, but I'm not gonna do that. So you have a nice idea of how the 30 minutes will look. I'll spend about a minute on each slide. But this trauma and suffering that we see now in the names of the unfortunate lives that have been lost recently, we see them in the news, we see the pictures, we see them on our social feeds. Just this morning, as I was watching the news in Tallahassee, another Black advocate has unfortunately lost her life, you know, standing up for what she believes in. And it's heartbreaking. But as educators, we have to learn how to draw that line, as you see on the screen, and turn the trauma and suffering into opportunity and learning experiences. This is a heavy lift. And with that heavy lift comes the reason why we start the Institute with the focus on health and wellness as it relates to civic engagement. Health and wellness is my particular passion. It's what I do, it's what I live, in addition to civic engagement. So when we draw that white line that you see across your screen, and let me go ahead and annotate so you could follow a nice spotlight, keep you engaged here. So you see, you draw that white line across your screen, you draw the line educators do as mothers, fathers, grandparents, community activists, we do. Draw that line and look towards those terms of perseverance, healing, hope, resilience, character development. And there's actually an interesting thread between suffering and perseverance leading to hope, resilience that we see in other areas of our lives on the spiritual side of things as well. But I wanted to bring this to the forefront. I'll pay particular attention to the compassion piece here, because if we're going to bring students or ourselves onto the other side of the struggle, we have to be compassionate and find that empathy, not just for other people, but we have to start with ourselves, being forgiving, having grace. This task force is actually titled the Commissioner of Education's African American History Task Force. Our commissioner, Richard Corcoran, is provided a very compelling message to everyone in the state, all stakeholders, and it's linked to that compassion hyperlink right there on your screen. This presentation will be made available afterwards. You can get to it. I won't show it, but he emphasizes for everyone, including this African American History Task Force, the need for compassion. And when we sow seeds of compassion, support, resilience, these words that we know, grace, it leads to a change in character, positive healing, resilience, perseverance, and hope. So I wanted to share this image with you as a nice visual. Also, when you talk about health and wellness in general, there's this term that comes to mind about social and emotional wellness and health. We hear that a lot as educators, SEL, and I wanted to clearly define what SEL is. Now, in comprehensive health education in the state of Florida, there's 12 components, and it ranges from substance use and abuse, nutrition, family life, internet safety. There's 12 components, but one of those 12 directly relates to the trend that connects with the topic of today, and that's mental and emotional education. And when you sit down mental emotional health education into the pure, what it really means, the essence, as it relates to civic engagement as well, you're going to find SEL as a trend, and I wanted to find it straight up from the beginning. So SEL is the process through which children and adults apply knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. And through all of those nice fancy words that mean so much to us all, we trend back to that trauma, suffering, breaking the chains, and leading into hope, perseverance, healing, resilience, and building character. This is SEL trends through all of our particular subject areas, our interests. In looking at the chat, I know there's many different levels and agencies represented here of civic engagers. I see there's attorneys, there's some law enforcement, there's educators, higher ed, K-12. It's beautiful. Community activists, family members. We can all relate to the importance of taking trauma, suffering, adverse childhood experiences, what we see on television now, social unrest, and turning it into, using health and wellness as a guide, turning it into more positive attributes. This definition came from CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, this SEL definition, and it's hyperlinked there so you could dig deeper as well. So here's a quick outline of the session for the next 25 minutes or so that I'll be with you, and I'm looking at my timer here. We're gonna do a check-in, and I have a poll I'm gonna run because, like Roxy said, and Dr. Kelly and Senator Hill, we like to be, even though we're virtual, we like to keep this engaging, and that's what we're gonna do. So we have a check-in, then we're gonna talk about the civic engagement starting point that's non-negotiable, like you have to start here, and I bet y'all know this already, but we're gonna do a quick reminder. We're going to also talk about very important central health and wellness data that guide our work. This data is more specific, targeted towards K-12 students, but we can also link back into some of the adult-oriented data as well. We'll speak briefly about collective impact, which really goes as a trend throughout all of the points that we're speaking about, as well as a closure with a special guest appearance from one of our leading students in the African American History Task Force, as well as highlights of some other students who are really leading the way as we promote change and civic engagement. So I'm going to run a poll, and in a moment you should see this question pop up on your screen. What's your primary professional role? I'm going to go ahead and start that poll. I'm going to launch it now. Hopefully you see it. And go ahead and respond. Are you a K-12 teacher, higher ed professor, K-12 administrator, higher ed administrator, a counselor, community partner, or other? And if you could go ahead and vote so we could display results shortly. Let's see. I'm going to relaunch because polling somehow closed. Hold on. Let's do that again. Okay. Let's give you guys about a minute. Go ahead and share what your professional role is, and then we will end the polling in about 20 seconds or so. We see a lot of K-12 teachers coming in, almost 100, followed by K-12 administrators and other. About 10 more seconds if you could vote for us. About half of us have voted. Thank you for engaging. All right, I'm going to go ahead and display the results for you. All right, so with us for today, as we kick off the Summer Institute, mainly we have K-12 teachers at 92%. So that's wonderful. And it's nice to see a representation throughout, followed by K-12 administrators and the other group. So it's very good. That's nice to see. We know who we should actually target to all, but we know that mainly here it's K-12 educators. And as a Department of Education employee, it's nice to see that. All right. So also, I want you to think about a question, and you could feel free to chat it, your responses in the chat box. Thinking about the definition that I shared with you as far as what SEL means, I want to ask you a question, and it is, how do you apply health and wellness, particularly social and emotional learning? How do you apply health and wellness in your life and as you assist and serve others? So go ahead and chat that, please, and we will shout out a few of your responses. I see some chats are coming in. It's important as we look at the chats coming in, as we continue to professionally develop, it's very important to make sure that we spend time checking in with our fellow educators, all right? So we have Brianna's mentioning meditation and mindfulness and journaling is important to her. Cooking for Lerania, very good. Mindfulness, Nathaniel, thank you. And daily check-in with students, Anna, excellent, makes sense. Fantastic, you can chat your responses in the chat. The little icon on your screen shows where that should be in your Zoom toolbar. Again, listening to music, Miss Jellin, exactly. All right, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And take a moment to look through and see what some of your colleagues and you know, this community has shared as well. And as you look at those, I want to draw your attention to a visual. This is a visual that was created, or the information was created by teachers through the Health and Wellness Continuing the Action series that we offer out of our office. These are some self-care SEL practices that group of students that represents about 55 school districts in the state. They mentioned, as you see, coffee is bolded. So I'm like, okay, that's different. Coffee came up at the top. So I guess, you know, making yoga practice as well. Walking was really dominant. Cycling, meditation, mindfulness. We can't forget the importance of these things and the importance of spending time with these things. So where do we begin? That was a lot already, just giving you the foundation for health and wellness, the connection to the African American History Task Force and civic engagement. What should be our starting point? You know, the importance of finding out, yes, self, and where that self connects with others and how we can make those connections a jump off for so many other opportunities and making change. So where do we begin is the question I asked. Before I answer that question and present it to you, which we kind of already answered it already, but I want to challenge you to be reminded of the definition of civic engagement. And there's two definitions on your screen because any good scholar would want two perspectives, because one, it's nice to kind of balance out the logic. And Elrich says civic engagement is, speaks about creating a combination of knowledge, skills, and values to motivate and make a difference, to promote the quality of life in community through political and non-political processes. Then we have the APA, the American Psychological Association definition. Civic engagement is individual and collective actions to bring forth public concern. So these two definitions are hyperlinked. And speaking of civic engagement, I want to draw your attention to the 2019 Governor Ron DeSantis House Bill 807 and Executive Order 1932. I've linked it there for you. I don't expect you to know exactly what that means just yet, but I want to remind you, when you have a chance to go back and look at this presentation, to dig into the Florida Civics Education Standards Review that's happening right now, actually. Our governor, it's amazing to have this support of leadership, upper level leadership in general. Our governor made it a point to require a review of civic standards. And this is a comprehensive review that requires engagement of stakeholders. So there's a link to that civics review platform, and hopefully you could, after things quiet down and the Institute comes, take a moment to lift your voice and take action into the excitement that Roxy started us with. That excitement's great, but the most important thing to make us really make a difference is to engage and act. So that's the way we can engage in civic engagement. So start here. You see on your screen, there's an image there, and it has to do with this thing right here, right? So ladies, you know what I'm talking about. You look in the mirror in the morning. Sometimes we look in the mirror, ladies and gentlemen, actually, we all do, and everybody in between looks in the mirror, and we don't even sometimes really think or reflect too much about how we think or why we reflect, or some of our personal and professional beliefs that do influence our civic engagement. So I'd like us to consider, definitely, in thinking of where we begin, to starting with thinking about ourselves, how we think about what we think about, where we're getting our information to think about it. And we have to start, number one, with civic engagement, as is on your screen, you see, with self-care. I've linked a few CDC resources for self-care that our office uses. Mindfulness is very important, and we'll actually end this session with a mindfulness moment that you could apply and use with the people that you work with and the people that you love. And I also want to draw your attention to the term that I put there, dis-ease. So sometimes, as we know, COVID-19 this year has totally shaken up our perspective of disease in terms of the connections that it has and the fabric that it threads. One disruption could impact the entire world, as we've seen that now. One sickness could impact everybody in one way or the other. Also, when thinking about self-care, not just disease, but be comfortable with what you see on your screen, what I put there for you, dis-ease. And this is a concept that, as we work with other professionals, as we work with students, it's going to get a little bit uncomfortable, going to get a little antsy when we talk about certain topics related to anti-Semitism, anti-racism, any issues that people, for whatever reason, have developed their own ideology that's sensitive. That dis-ease is an interesting word in 2020, not just for the COVID-19 disease, but the dis-ease that has caused social unrest that's going to move us into number two on your screen. Start here. Really strengthening our connections, our collaborations, our networks. And I know Rudy Jamison, we went to school together. He's going to talk about the importance of mentoring and networking, and really starting with not just the youth, but also as professionals, making sure that we stay well educated and connected. Connections. And also that leads to collective impact. So this is the start here point. You must start with self. which is hard as educators. I know almost 90-something% of us on here are educators, teachers or professors directly. A lot of times it's our intuition to want to go to start with the student first. Okay, let's help the student. But we have to be reminded of that, what we hear every time we take a flight, and we see sometimes the meme, you know, put your own oxygen on first before you can help others. And it's clear and it's true. So we have to be reminded of that. There's some articles, research here that will help you do that. And I also want to draw your attention to that pause button, because being very real with you, that's the only way I know how to come. A lot of times when we talk about self-care and civic engagement, connections and collective impact, we need to do ourselves a favor and pause for just a moment. Pause, reflect, think. Okay, we have tragedies going on in our society, but we have many things to celebrate going on in our society. There's darkness, there's light. There's truth, there's lies. Okay, there's anarchy, there's peace. There's hope, there's despair. So we have to see and pause the situation, really understanding, looking at ourselves, our reflection first, understanding truly, seeing ourselves for what's the truth, seeing others for what the truth is, and then being able to creatively design our next steps, our connections and impact from there. Look at my time. Okay, we're doing good. So I want to share with you some of the central and essential data that guides our office, that guides the Department of Education when we talk about health and wellness. I want to remind you that this data is more reflects students' data, and there's, of course, the student data then reflects our communities and trends that we'll see as the students become adults. But before I do, I want to run another poll, and I want to make sure y'all are still with me, and I know you are. There's a very important acronym called YRBS that the Department of Health in Florida, the Centers for Disease Control, as well as the Department of Education, that we invest in as a survey of students. It's every other year, and this survey represents students throughout Florida. So I want to run a poll, and I'm gonna do that right now, and ask you, are you familiar with YRBS data? And I just launched it, so you should see it. So if you're familiar with data from the Florida Youth Risk Behavior Survey, can you please let us know? Yes, no, or I think so. Got almost 100 responses, thank you. And it's amazing to see almost 250 participants on here. This is awesome. Okay, so if you're familiar with YRBS, respond to the poll, please. I'll give you about 10 more seconds.
Yeah, 250 guests, Dr. Gibson, that's absolutely extraordinary. Yeah, we are excited. and we're looking for even more as we go. We're looking for even more as we go.
Celebrate good times. Come on.
Right.
Good. Thank you. Almost, okay. Pretty much more than half looks like you have voted. So are you familiar with YRBS data? Let's share the results. Okay, hopefully you could see the results. That most of you are not familiar with YRBS data, 80%. So with that being said, I'm going to keep an eye on my time, but I'm going to share with you how you can access this data, because the YRBS is a survey, like I said, that really asks students directly about their protective factors and their risk behaviors that influence what you see on your screen, that influence their risk for mental health illness, according to CDC, that influence their illicit drug use, according to the National Center of Drug Administration, that influence their risk for sexual abuse, 1 in 10 children before their 18th birthday, and also impact the use of vaping, which I know you're familiar with, but let me draw your attention. Between 2017 and 2019, our students have for some reason taken a horrible interest in vaping. Its usage has doubled, prevalence has doubled, according to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, and that's 2019 data. So this is some scary stuff. So I'm going to try to hyperlink here into this. Y'all bear with me here. I'm going to go to this visual story here. Is it going to make me stop sharing? Hang on, guys. Let me just try to go straight to the link. Or is that not going to work? Bear with me. Right here for you. Okay. I'm going to make sure you can still see my screen.
We will let you know,
Can
Dr.
you guys see that? Can you
Yeah,
guys
we
see my
can see
screen?
it. Mhm.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So I want to share with you some, I think it's right here. Here it is. The 2019 YRBS storybook that the Department of Health in collaboration with the DOE produced. And this is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. It shows trends dating back, not just at like a 2 or 3 year glance, but I think there's like a 10-year trend line. And this link is hyperlinked in my presentation, or you could, snap a screenshot, whatever you want. But 35.6% of high school students, for example, texted or emailed while driving. 24.2% were teased because of their weight or physical appearance. 12.7% reported carrying a weapon at school. Now here's the interesting part, which it's all interesting, but here's the part where you want to spend time digging into. So this data, and let me annotate so you see a light to follow. This data is disaggregated by sex, so you have the male and female, and then you also have the 3 race groups here. So looking at the total is eye-opening. Let's go down, this is vehicle safety, but let's go down to behavioral health, keeping in mind with SEL like we were talking about. Looking at the SEL data, for example, let's do depression. Okay, so total, we have 33.7% of students feeling sad or hopeless for 2 or more weeks in a row, 15.6% attempting suicide. Now, like I mentioned in the beginning, we have to remember that, okay, this is grim, but the nice thing is, okay, we have 85% of students that did not seriously consider suicide. So we celebrate those teachers and educators and communities that are making a difference, a positive difference. But for those students that are in this 15.6% attempting suicide, for example, we have 13.1% of that group being in self-reporting as Black. Attempting suicide is 8%, and 9.5% of that group is from the Black community. 9.5%. Substance use, alcohol use is eye-opening. 26.1% of high school students reported currently drinking alcohol. That's within the past, I believe it's either 14 or 30 days. And of that 26%, 18.5% in that group represented the Black population. So this is important for us as we civically engage and take actions to be aware of the data and the trends. This is the trend data that I mentioned, 10-year trend data. Very interesting report here. And as we work with students, it's nice to keep our pulse on the research and make sure that we know the research that's specific to our areas of concern. Roxy mentioned young ladies as well. The numbers tend to be disproportionately high among women or young women. So that's an area of concern as well. Okay. So I wanted to make sure that you all saw the storyboard and that you know how to access that data as well. All right, so let's get back to this. All right. So these statistics guide the work of our office. Many of you on here, you mentioned being K-12 educators. You know that this year, particularly the State Board of Education passed 3 state board rules related to mental and emotional health, substance use and abuse, and child trafficking. In working with the social studies content specialist, with Mike and Tim, and the Bureau of Standards of Instruction and Support that I work with, we found in looking at our data analysis that I think it was a staggering number, well over 50% of that required instruction is occurring in social studies classes. So that was really the moment where in my office, I felt like I really need to engage even deeper with the social studies team and teachers to help bridge understandings between health and wellness and social studies. So all teachers, no matter of the subject area, I'm sure you're well aware, and if you are, you can put it in the chat box. If you've done it, if you've taught this required instruction this year, maybe share that too. But this is required instruction that is going to be, is in statute, and it's going to be required every year, related to mental health, substance use, and child trafficking prevention. All right, so about 10 more minutes left. So collective impact is one of the final pieces that I wanted to emphasize and speak about. It was so nice to see that, you know, Roxy started off today with just getting you all excited. And, you know, she said, you know, if you're ready to make a difference, type I do in the chat box, you know? And it was so, that's wonderful. And we need that excitement. And then Senator Hill mentioned the importance of engaging legislature into what we do and the political aspect of it. And we know this is important. From the Department of Education perspective, I'll emphasize the importance of putting your eyes on this Reopening Florida Schools and the CARES Act. It's like a 143-page document that was released just, I believe, on Friday. And $475 million in aid is provided to Florida through the Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act. That's what CARES stands for. $475 million going locally to school districts, some to state agencies, but for the most part, local allocation of these dollars to further the support of students during the COVID crisis, the social unrest crisis, just reopening Florida's schools and providing continuity of care at that multi-tier level of support that we're well familiar with. Not just for academics, not just for the academic intelligence, but for the EQ, the emotional intelligence. Remember, there's that IQ and EQ. So I linked this document in the presentation. I'm not going to click to it because it's deep. It's 150 something pages. But trust and believe, I'll spend time going through this document in detail, because as we work to operationalize a collective impact, we have to make sure that we're grounded in what's already happening. We have to make sure we're grounded, of course, in research, and that was my dissertation, researcher-practitioner partnership. So what works? So that links back to the data that I shared and some of the protective factors and risks that are specific to populations of concern and the whole. And we want to remain knowledgeable. Now, on the left side of your screen, you'll see this big amplify here, and there's a couple links down here to Harvard Business Review resources that help guide what's called design thinking sometimes. Because when we look at collective impact, we have to consider design thinking and working with people. So if you look at one of those circles on your screen, there's going to be a way, there's going to be an angle and an interest in a person, that might be one of those circles, that we need connected into our fold, into our collaborative, into our summer institute, into our school, into our community, that's going to bring about the collective impact. And with design thinking, which is another very wonderful article that's linked here for you, it's Harvard Business Review, design thinking begins with the amplify that you see on your screen. It begins with this.
Dr. Gibson,
yes.
We had a couple of questions. I was trying to wait for a good minute to jump in, but I know you wanted to answer questions, okay?
Yes.
Let me go back. I'm trying to navigate here.
Actually, Roxy, that's perfect timing, because like I said, collective impact begins with listening. So okay. I'll take as long as I have time, we can take as many.
You have time. You know, Senator Hill gave us some. It was back about that CARES Act, I think.
Okay.
And someone asked, can it be used for counseling or therapist?
Yes, of
So
course.
that was a question, and I'm trying to get to them as many as I can. So I know that was one question that you might want to speak to.
Let me answer that question a little more thoroughly. So the
Okay.
CARES Act funding is for, and I mentioned it previously, K-12 educators as well as higher ed educators are familiar with the term multi-tiered system of support and student support services. So the CARES Act funding is for reopening schools, school buildings, and support systems, and it includes student support. So there are assurances in the CARES Act in this document that speak to how that funding could be used for counseling services as well.
All right. Then we had someone that really was talking about how COVID really interfered with not only the exam and the mental health teaching for many students. So
Right.
that was something that was also based on one of your comments.
Yes. So thank you for acknowledging that. Yes, that COVID not only impacted socially the SEL aspect, but also academics, and that's all part of the conversations. Nobody has the answer right now. It's a little bit frustrating for some because it's like we're used to wanting quick answers, but right now the guidance is for local school districts using this Reopening Florida Schools and the CARES Act document and guidance from FDOE and the funding. The direction is for local school districts now to take into consideration the COVID crisis, the COVID disease, the social unrest disease, and reopen Florida schools in a healthy way for both academic success as well as the emotional and social success of students and educators and support staff.
Right, and they're talking a lot about what you've done in the past, and I think some people are very familiar with you. So they just need to understand and know they can dialogue more with you via that app because you're very astute at that, and there may be some things that you can help them with. So she's very open to that. So thanks for that. Thanks for letting me interview for a minute.
You're fine. So, well, Roxy, tell me, it's 1 o'clock. How much more time do I have, Madame?
I know you want to do your surprise, right?
I do. I'm on slide 11 of 15, so I have 4 more slides.
There you go. So I won't interrupt you with questions anymore.
No, it's not interruption at all. Actually, as they come, let me know and we'll address them. I love it. Okay. All right. Good. So thank you for asking those questions and clarifying. But explore with me, connect with me. I feel like clicking this link, but to be honest with you, I don't think it'll even open up on my computer because I have Zoom going and this and that. It probably will, but it will take too long. And see, I'm tempted now. I said that, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, you have about 10 minutes good and with your surprise, about 10 minutes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm not going to do it because there's something really sweet that I want to share that has to do with anti-Semitism towards the end. And if I can, I will. Okay. So there's a little more homework. And we talked about the HBR connection. Okay. So here are 2 images. Speaking of collective impact, a lot of times in history, we see that it's the student voice that leads change. And especially in African and African-American history, it's the students that really, we see it now in the news. It's the young people that's really a catalyst for making change, as well as with the mentoring and advisement and the truth that their elders have instilled upon them. But I want to show you 2 images of hope. The first image comes, and I saw a few people in here from Northeast Florida. This comes from a group in Northeast Florida that I was a part of, and I actually miss not having my kente stole because I used it in 2002 when I graduated high school. And in every year that I graduated with my master's and doctorate, Ebony Society, growing up in Palm Coast, this is just one example of a group that definitely put into action the importance of treating youth development as gardening, sowing and fertilizing and tending to the seeds of our next generation. So this is a program they put on last year, and it was just beautiful. It was just lovely to see that. Another example of collective impact that was, a nice reflection came from the Kiwanis Club. And this is their Kiwanis One Day, where they go out, and Kiwanis is a service organization in all communities, and it's actually international in many communities. And they instill on unity as one, and not just unity as one, but doing service projects together. And this was a garden that they had planted at one of the, I believe it's a community schools, and it's nice to see the diversity in that as well. So we can't downplay the importance of the collective impact, you know, especially now when we have this CARES Act funding, the $475 million in aid going to our schools and school districts and communities. If we're really going to make recovery efforts and bring us to the other side of that line that I shared in the beginning of trauma and suffering into hope, resistance, resilience, then we're going to have to make sure that we work on closing those achievement gaps and really supporting our students and communities. And that's a family thing as well. So it's nice to see some family represented here as well. Okay, so I want to show, and I hope Brandon is on. Brandon, are you there? Because I'll be talking about you in a few minutes. The WISC model is a model that guides the work of healthy schools in every school district. This is a national and state model. It was produced by the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, as well as the ASCD, the Association of School and Curriculum Development. This model operationalizes or puts into perspective for each of our interests as educators the importance of keeping students at the center of our work and the importance of civic engagement, the importance of interdisciplinary curriculum instruction, which is why civic engagement can't just end up in the lap of social studies teachers or in the lap of community groups that are external to our schools. And if you look at this model, and I'll go ahead and annotate again so you can see the spotlight, the student is at the center, surrounded by tenets of healthy, safe, engaged, supported, and challenged factors. This is a coordinated policy, process, and practice for learning and improving health. So again, it takes the IQ and the EQ, the emotional intelligence with the academic intelligence. Wrapped around are these very important factors of health education, community involvement, family engagement, and you see the rest of them there. School and support services, counseling, social services, that was a question that came up. So this is your ammunition when we talk about how do we even frame the conversation in our schools around such a topic as social and emotional learning, as health education. You might thinking, I'm a science teacher, how does this relate? Every school should have a school advisory, a school health advisory council. And that's the mission of the School Health Advisory Council, is to use the WISC model as well as the very much so collaborative approach of the School Health Advisory Council, the SHAC, to put students at the center and to really bring to light civic engagement, but putting students at the center and keeping academics at the focus as well. It's called the WISC model, as you see on your screen. So there's a couple of initiatives here that I want to share with you. We have a Student Voices group. The link is here. It's on the Comprehensive Health Education webpage. We have collaborated with youth throughout Florida, the Children's Trust, Key Club Student Council, Teen Talk Radio, teen health educators, and I meet with these students to put to action what I'm asking here as the K-12 and higher ed educators. I don't have a direct group of students in a classroom anymore, but I'm an educator at heart. And one day again, I will have a group of students in a classroom, although they won't be K-12. And it's important to engage the student voice and to celebrate and to cultivate, as we fertilize that garden, of the importance of civic engagement and academic support in their lives. So
and Brandon is here. He's here.
Yay, Brandon's here.
Yes, I am here.
Brandon, hi. Can we see you on video?
Yeah, I'm on my phone, so I can't turn on the video, but I am able to call in.
Brandon, can you tell us for maybe a minute, a little bit about what you do, your work on the task force, and how it intersects with student voices and Florida youth?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I run an organization called Hear the Youth in Jacksonville. And really, our main goal is just to empower young people to make their voices heard because a lot of times officials who have the power to make change on, matters that impact youth, whether that may be, education issues or things like a lack of school lunch or computers at home, which are all things Hear the Youth has dealt with. Although they may have the power to make change on those things, they may not know those problems exist. And that's kind of where youth come in because they're the people who've directly experienced these things and they can help inform and really improve policy just by us listening to their voices. And so that's kind of what led me to want to join the task force and really share my opinions as a young person because, we can't just talk about young people without involving young people. And so that's basically what our goal is.
And when you say our goal, Brandon, your organization, and you started it, you're the founder, right? It's called
That's
Hear
right.
the Youth?
Yep.
Hear the Youth, okay. And so we have the correct link, Brandon, thank you. I linked to your Hear the Youth webpage right on top of your headshot there. And please, if you'd like to learn more about the work that Brandon's doing or the work that the Student Voices group here is doing, as well as this young lady here, Brandon, you hit it right on when you said that the best way to know what a group of people need is to ask them, to listen, going back to that amplify image. And this young lady below is Olivia, so you're from Jacksonville, she's from South Florida, and she actually wrote a couple of books on diversity and inclusion, and she published those books, and Olivia is a part of HIP, the Health Improvement Project, out of Dade. She's also on Student Voices, and there's a Miami Herald article that features her work that's linked there for you as well, for you all to see.
Awesome.
So Brandon, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Kelly highlighted a quote when we were having our planning meeting, and no matter how old you are, we always have mentors. She reminded me of the Mary McLeod Bethune quote, "We have a powerful potential in our youth, and we must have the courage to change old ideas and practices so that we may direct their power towards good ends." Thank you for
Awesome.
that. All right, and then I have a couple ending quotes, and it looks like I have 3 minutes left. So Malcolm X, the first DVD that I ever got from my dad when DVDs came out. "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." And education is not just for the youth, it's for us too. That's why we're here. So we're preparing for it today, being at this institute. And "Your scars are witnesses that you never gave up. You are a hero." As the last slide that I'll share today, our scars run deep. Some of the names that we're hearing in the news, and it's some named, some unnamed, it's hard to even fathom what's happening in our society right now. But I'd like to, before I do something that will just take 1 minute, and it's something very important, I want to leave you with a quote that our bureau chief, who sends us daily inspiration, Dr. Kathy Noble, sent us this quote this morning, and it's by Ella Fitzgerald. As you know, she's the First Lady of Song, Queen of Jazz, Lady Ella. She has many different titles, and rightfully so. She said, "Just don't give up trying to do what you really want to do. Don't give up trying. Where there is love and inspiration, I don't think you can go wrong." And love and inspiration begins with ourselves. So we go back to this image where we started. Where do we start with health and wellness? What's our next step? It begins with self-reflection, aligning, and acting, which is the beauty of professional learning opportunities like the Summer Institute. So with that, you see this logo here, this kind of like the icon, breathe, Black Lives Matter. But there's a part of that that says, I can't breathe, remember? But luckily enough, we can breathe. We are here, and we're given the opportunity to breathe. So there's a 1 minute, and I'm gonna end with this, a 1 minute exercise that I wanna share with you, and it's called triangle breathing. Some of you might know it. And I want you to do it with me. And luckily, you all are not panelists. Nobody could see you, but you're gonna see me do it. And it's so easy to do. As you see the triangle expand, your diaphragm, sit up nice and tall. Do this for yourself. Self-care, we're doing this for 1 minute, the 1 minute I have left. You're gonna breathe for 1 minute as it expands, and then as the triangle collapses, you're gonna exhale, okay? Let's do it together. It's just 1 minute. Do it for yourself. Oh, how many wish they could breathe right now. I thank you very much for the time spent. Let's continue to remember the quote shared by Ella Fitzgerald. When we have love and inspiration, we just can't go wrong. Let's keep trying, reflect, and act.
Wow, wow, wow. Let's chat it up for Dr. Gibson Alonzo. Let's chat it up. Let's chat it up for her. What an amazing experience. What a powerful, powerful close. As I'm sitting here, I was doing it, and it brought back thoughts of what's going on in our country, but then it gave a feeling of peace and release. And so thank you for the experience. What I want everyone to do right now is think about it. What one thing did you gain from this experience from Dr. Gibson that you will utilize, wherever you are? And many of you are K-12 educators, many of you are administrators. What's one thing that you gained that you will utilize? And also let's chat it up for Brandon and the amazing things that he's doing as a young man. And there are so many students out there that have a voice, and I think it's always great that we give them that voice. And it was so important to Dr. Gibson that she allowed Brandon this space. She didn't want to just talk about it. She thought she needed to be about it, right? And so thank you for allowing that. Now, a couple of things. There are a couple of questions that I wanted to speak to. Dr. Gibson, yes, her presentation, it will be in the app. Remember, we want you to download the app, and that's where you're going to gain all of that valuable information. You're going to be able to check in the app, and that relates to your PD points, but also we can do that too, so don't let that scare you off. But the app is where you're going to gain some important information, so that will be there. Let me also bring your attention to this. When you have a question, let's utilize the question in the Q&A feature. And that allows us to see that question and we can answer it more effectively. When we're putting the question in the chat, it's a little more difficult. So if you actually have a question for the presenter, which we actually encourage, we want to provide you with some Q&A because interaction is important for us. And we want to ensure that, as Dr. Gibson said, that we're engaging you. Because yes, we want to be powered up, like we said in the beginning. But for us and here in that VSC training, powered up is this, Dr. Gibson, purpose-driven. We're here on purpose. There's a purpose for us being here. Organizationally focused. Where are you? What matters in your classroom, in your district, in your city, in your community, in your organization? So we need to listen with that mind. Win, win, win based. We all win. We win individually. The History Task Force wins as a result of this collaboration. But the people whose lives you impact daily win because we're having this experience. And Dr. Gibson, here you go. Energizing and engaging, that's the E. So we have to keep everyone energized and engaged so we can get through this virtual experience, but then in the end, results oriented. So yes. Our power is on purpose. Yes, our energy is on purpose, and we are powered up and ready to grow. And so that's what we are. And so thank you. We have Dr. Austin coming up next. Camille is going to get us spotlighted on Dr. Austin while I am, in fact, getting her slide ready. I think we have a question here. Let me make sure. Again, how do you obtain the app? What you do, you're going to go to the website, AAHTF events.com, and there's going to be a button for you to download the app. If you have problems, Camille, if you can put your number, chat your number in the text feature, just text Camille and she may be able to give you some instructions to do that. But that's a critical piece of our puzzle in the app. I'm also going to bring your attention back to the survey. You can, again, we need your assessment as we're going through this experience. Next, I'm going to bring up Dr. Austin. And as we said, we need to understand the African American History Task Force is all about getting us to a place where we are effectively integrating the teaching of African American history and African peoples into our curriculum. We're integrating it, implementing it. And we have some schools across our state who are doing a great job at that. And so Dr. Austin is going to talk us through how we can get to that point. And we have Dr. Donna Austin coming up to do that. Dr. Austin, if you go ahead and do your welcome and start chatting, I am going to get your screen ready. So Dr. Donna Austin.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for taking time today to be a part of this wonderful platform. I'm going to be talking with you about being an exemplary school district. Right now, you see before you on the website, it gives you the criteria for being an exemplary school district. But first, what I want to know from everyone, I'd like for you to put in the chat box, who wants to make a difference in the lives of students? Who is interested in actually changing and closing the gap among students? If that's you, let me know that that's you, because that's what this is all about. So we're going to get started with looking at the exemplary school district and what are the criteria and objectives for being an exemplary or being recognized as an exemplary school district. There are 6 criteria, and each one of those criteria has objectives that are associated with it. And for the first criteria, we have school board approval of African American History Initiative. That is very important that the school board has actually approved for this African American History Initiative. The school board should have developed a plan for implementation of the Florida African and African American History required instruction. Now remember, this is required instruction by the Florida statutes, which is the 1003-42B statute. Now, the school board should have that plan implementation and it should be publicized. Everybody should be able to know where to go to get to that information about the plan for implementing the curriculum. It should be up on the district's website, on the school's website. It should be very well publicized. And it should also be given to the community and the families so that they'll know what is actually taking place in the schools. Now, the second criteria is structured professional development. We all know as educators, that is extremely important for us to have professional development. That way, the district we're looking for the district to meet the objective of the school district has developed and implemented an ongoing professional development plan for training teachers, students, and school staff in strategies for teaching African American history. In other words, your district should, in order to be an exemplary district, should have a strategic plan for implementing professional development so that you guys are very familiar with what it is that you're expecting to do and how you're expecting to do it as it relates to learning the implementation of the curriculum. Also under that criteria is adequate resources have been allocated for structured professional development programs for enhancing the instruction of African American history in an infused format. In other words, your district should have monies that are specifically earmarked for professional development for the implementation of African American history, not just professional development workshops, but they must be earmarked specifically for having professional development for the implementation of African and African American history. Our third criteria, African American Studies curriculum. Now, the African American History curriculum frameworks, K-12, should be integrated as part of the district's policy with respect to required curriculum. Now, mind you, in this criteria, and the objective is for you guys to have the implementation of their curriculum K through 12, not just at high school, not just at middle school, but we want to start our students off at the very youngest age and start to introduce them to the African American history, because that's going to make a significant difference in the way that students are performing in our schools. The African American curriculum has the curriculum has been disseminated. This is the other objective, is that the curriculum has to be disseminated to curriculum specialists, teachers, media specialists, and other educators in the district. Everyone should have access to the curriculum. Everyone. And I would even go as far as to say, in the schools that I have worked in, we have even included our custodians, we've included our cafeteria workers, we have called in our bus drivers, because all of us need to be on the same page when we are working with these students. So anyone that is coming in contact with the students, they should be aware of the African and African American history curriculum. The other thing is that we want to make sure the district should make sure that there are adequate teaching resources, including books and CDs and digital media and lesson plans available to support the required instruction. So what I am a believer in is that we need to make sure that we are touching every single learning style for every child to have an equal opportunity to learn what it is that their teachers are teaching. So we need to make sure that we're not just having pencil and paper, but we're doing audio, we're doing video, we're doing a lot of hands-on learning, especially for our African-American students, because we know that we like that hands-on learning, those activities. So we want to make sure that the district is offering the resources where it is touching all learning styles for all students. Our fourth criteria is a structured teaching of the African American history curriculum. Now, the objective is to have African American history content appear in lesson plans over a sustained period of 180 days. Now, I hope everyone heard me. Did I say 180 days? If you heard me say teach African American history for a period of 180 days, would you please put in the chat box that I'm going to teach for a period of 180 days African American history, not just doing Black history. We need to be engaging all of our children in African American history throughout the entire school year. The other objective is that there are approved methods for teaching and assessing the African American history curriculum. Now, when I think about that, I think about we should be doing, for example, a method that is a student-centered approach where the teacher and the student are equally, they have an equal role in learning. So, and then that way that the children are more actively engaged in the educational process. And then the teachers must also make sure that you have a formal and informal assessments. Now, we know that we must have formal and informal assessments that are actually assessing what you are teaching. So when you're in the classroom and you are teaching the African American history, then your assessments should reflect that instruction. So we make sure that we are assessing our children on that. Another objective is African American history content are infused in all subject areas. I hope you guys heard me say that, in all subject areas. This is not just for history classes. This is not just for civic classes. This is for every single class in the school. So if you are on board with having this done in every class, say, I'm on board for having this in every class. Put that in the chat box for me. Let me know that you are so on board with that. Another criteria is university and school districts must collaborate. That is so very important, that you build that relationship, get the university involved in professional development, curriculum, and instruction support. That is extremely important. And that the school district and university partnership should also be looking for external funding, like federal or foundation grants, to support this effort, support this initiative of implementing the African American curriculum all year in the classrooms. The school district should also with their partnership with the university is aid in the preparation for pre-professional teachers and other educators. So what we envision is that the school district and the university will be talking and collaborating and talking about how is it that we can prepare our teachers that are in the departments of education, in the College of Education, so that they may be prepared to come right out and transition right into what we're doing in the districts. We don't need the teachers coming out of the universities and trying to figure out what to do as it relates to implementing the curriculum, the African American curriculum. That's why it's so very important for us to have those collaborations between the universities and the school district, so we all understand just how to funnel those educators right into the system, very streamlined. And another very important piece is that we work with our parents and communities. We must have parent and community workshops. Partnerships. We must, and workshops. We must have community and parent partnerships. Now, the school district's initiative in African American history should result in the development of strategies that include the involvement of parents through awareness information. How many of you, well, just tell me in the chat box, if you think that infusing the African American history for 180 days in every single classroom will excite a parent in the fact of them knowing that they are sending their children to a culturally competent institution, someone who knows and understands about their child. Because we know, as is right now today, we are not getting all the information that we need to build up those self-esteem in our students, so that we can help them to understand that they are not what society has dictated or said that they are, but we are greater than what people believe and speak about us. So we need to infuse all of that positivity into the spirits of the children, and then the parents too will be excited about that. Now, how do we get the collaboration with the businesses and the communities? One of the ways that I would seriously suggest is that you include them in on your SAC meetings, and you also would want to do a career day. And I say do career days in elementary all the way through high school. And when you do them, particularly at the elementary level, let them dress up as those persons who they're representing as African American professionals. And you will be amazed at just how much you will get activities coming from the communities that want to sponsor those types of initiatives, as well as you will get parent engagement. And that is very, very, very important. So those are our 6 criteria and those objectives. Now, I just want to share with you and just put some bragging out there about 9 of our school districts. And so if you are from any of these school districts, I want you to put it in the chat box. That's me. I'm from there. And so Broward County, let me hear it for Broward County, Duval County. These are the counties who are already exemplary counties. Again, Broward County, go Broward, Duval County, Gaston County. And Gaston County is a county that is predominantly African American. So we are very excited about that. Hillsborough County, can I hear it one time for Hillsborough County? Leon County, represent. I'm here, represent. Miami-Dade, come on, Bottom. We always said that. That's Pinellas County. Let me hear it from you, Pinellas County. St. Lucie, come on in there, St. Lucie. I know you're out there. Those are our 9 counties that have already met the requirement for being an exemplary school district. Now, we do have 3 counties, and we want to recognize them, that are nearing the exemplary status. So come on, let me hear it from you, Alachua. And anything you need from us, Alachua, to get you over that hurdle so that you can be an exemplary county, let us know. Marion County, you're almost there. We just want you to keep chucking along, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure that you get there. And let me hear from you, Volusia County. Volusia County, yay! You're almost there. And those counties who I have not called, hey, don't feel bad, because we have things in place that will help you get to help you get to exemplary status. That's what we're here for. My name is Donna Austin. I love what I'm doing here with the African American History Task Force. My information is out there for you to get in contact with me. I am so looking forward to being in conversations and visiting you either through Zoom or through face-to-face, where we can really talk about getting your district to be an exemplary school district. So right now, what I like, any district that I did not call, if you would, just give me a shout in the chat and say, we want to be an exemplary school district. And we thank you so very much for your interest. We thank you so much for your time, because this is going to make a significant difference in the lives of all students. Yes, we're talking about African American history. Yes, it's going to make a significant difference in the lives of African American students, but it is also going to make a huge difference in the lives of others as they interact with us, as they start to see us in ways that they have never seen us before. So if you are very serious, if you're like me, and you've been sitting at home and saying, wow, with all of this going on, how can I make a positive impact? What can I do from my frame of reference? This is it. This is what you can do from your frame of reference. Learn all you can about the African American History Studies. Make sure that you go on our website. The lesson plans are out there. We have taken all of that pain out of you having to try to find lesson plans. The lesson plans are out there on the site for you to get started, so you don't even have any reason for not helping your district to become an exemplary school district. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time, and I am open for questions.
Yeah, we have one question, Dr. Austin. We got just about a couple of minutes, 2 minutes before Dr. Maddie Yoon, so we want to stay on track. But we have one question, and I do want to encourage you, like Dr. Austin said, you can chat with her via your app. Always know that you can chat with her via your app. And if you want to get all this information that Dr. Austin spoke about, you're going to visit afroamflorida.org. And then you'll get those lesson plans and things like that. But this is a question, Dr. Austin, maybe to you and any other task force member that may have this. Does the Department of Education have a required textbook for teaching African American history in the high school level? If not, do you have any recommendations for a textbook?
I think that we have one of the presenters that's going to be sharing that information as it relates to the textbooks. Okay. But again, we do have the lesson plans out online. So I would recommend that you start there for sure. And there are some other resources that are listed out there. That's a great question. Thank you. That lets me know that you are interested. I appreciate that question.
Very good. And then I love the idea of having students dress up as historical African-American figures. How do I get my non-African-American parents on board with allowing their children to participate?
So now when I was in school, and when I was I've been a counselor. I was a counselor pre-K through 12. So when I was at an elementary school, we just did not have that concern, because when we have our PTA meetings and when we have our SAC meetings, we have representation from all races that are on the SAC committees and the PTA meetings, committees. So when we're sitting there and we're talking with them about the initiatives that we're doing, I just never ran into that concern because they're interested. And we can tell that they're interested because look at all the people that's out there marching. It's not just us that are out there marching. The only reason that you may have some pushback from anyone is if you run into one of those parents who, I need not say, that just don't want to respect the process. I'll leave it like that. But you will not, you should not have any pushback on that. I've never run into that the 30 years that I've been in schools.
Thank you so much again, Dr. Austin. Let's give it up for Dr. Austin. And please, let's chat about what we took away. She had you chatting the whole time. And Dr. Gibson, Dr. Austin was most certainly powered up and ready to go, right? She was powered up. She was standing up. And we felt your energy all the way through the virtual wave. So thank you so much, Dr. Austin. We really appreciate you. Coming up next, we're going to have Dr. Maddie Yoon. One more question. This is a good one. I mean, all the questions are good ones, but this is another one that just came up. As a white female, I have always been afraid of cultural appropriation in doing something like this. So I'm not sure what the answer is, but it's a powerful statement that you may want to address.
So the Institute, like what we're doing now, this is an opportunity to try to alleviate some of the nervousness. And what we're doing is putting together things and would like to train with the teachers in the community. So the person who asked that question, if you would reach out to me, because what we'd like to do is help you work through this and to get your district to the point of where they will allow us to come in and do some workshops so that we can take some of the sting out of this. We do understand that this is very sensitive, and it is extremely important that teachers and educators are trained to implement this, because the thing we don't want is we don't want people out here saying something that is not true or saying something that will cause a lot of headaches because it was totally misunderstood. So it is very important that you allow us to come in and help train with the implementation of this initiative.
So,
Thank you.
Roxy,
Dr. Kelly.
yes, I just want to say that, just reminding everybody that this is in law. 1994, the law was passed by the legislature that this would be taught. What we find is that, yes, there's a law, but sometimes we have to do some sensitivity training for participants in districts in particular. And we do have resources where we can come into a district that can help parents, teachers, and administrators become culturally sensitive. So that is something that has been lacking, because you know, you can pass a law, but it's hard to pass a law for your heart and your mind. But if you are given an opportunity to understand and respect and view another point of view, it makes a difference. So have no fear. It's already been in law. It's been in law since 1994 that we must teach that. It is required instruction. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Kelly, can you stay on for a second? We have another question, and you can reach out to the all of the presenters via the app. You can privately chat them as well during your chat features, because all of the speakers will be looking at their chats. But Dr. Kelly, we have another question. Do you serve any districts outside of Florida? I am a teacher in Georgia.
Okay, so one of our presenters tomorrow is in Georgia. He's in Atlanta. He did his dissertation based upon the work that we've done here. I have gone as far as Washington, D.C., California, and did some of this, but this particular funding for this particular effort is from the Florida legislature and the Florida Department of Education. So if we come and do something for you, it would not be on Florida's dime. You know how Florida is. If you don't, let me just share with you. So there are resources. We have many contacts across the country, and they are aware and know how to do the sensitivity training, how to help you get started, and those kinds of things. We've often helped New Jersey. We started in Philadelphia. We've done a number of these, like I said, across the country. So I hope that helps. Don't let that deter you. Send me an email.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kelly. And that's the exciting thing about civic engagement as well, because this is a law in the state of Florida. All it takes is the right group of people to work together with leaders like Dr. Kelly, who again said that she may be able to help you even possibly shape some things that you begin to get boots on the ground to change law in your state. I mean, I just jumped out there with that, Dr. Kelly, but that's what civic engagement sounds like it is to me.
Can we get Tony to chime in for that? Because
Okay.
he does work at the national level as well. And sometimes he always talks about NAACP. Just about every state has an organization called NAACP. Tony.
Okay, here he is.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Kelly.
He might be.
Sister Hall, we need them to zero in to their state legislators. And
Okay.
be out of Atlanta will be the national chair of the National Black Caucus of Legislators. And if they're interested in getting engaged in terms of asking the legislators, just pull down our website and give it to your local legislator. Say, we like to do this in Georgia. We like to do this in Indiana. We like to do this in Kentucky. We like to do. So they won't have any excuse. They have a template right in front of them, what they need to do to implement. Because as I understand it from Dr. Akura, we're the only state in the country that mandates by legislature that we teach African-American history K through 12.
All
But
right,
we
thank
can help connect some dots with them. I see Paula Halverston, who is on the line, who is the past chair of the what we call corporate roundtable. And then maybe we might want to push a piece of legislation to our National Black Caucus of State Legislators, as well as the National Conference of State Legislators, because this is truly can be implemented in each state by their legislature.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Kelly, Senator Hill. And then this is another thing that this then brings back another question that was asked, or a statement, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this throughout, is that after this 3-day presentation, I would like for us to have a follow-up session. We can discuss current events or whatever, but I know that with Dr. Kelly, there are some ongoing things that are in the works and that do happen. So just again, stay tuned throughout the entire Summer Institute, and you will gain valuable information that will show you how you can stay active and to activate and to get where you need to be. And one last thing I want to say before we bring up Dr. Maddie Yoon is this, and I know we all know all of this, but the teaching of African peoples and the contributions of African Americans to our society, it's not only African American history, it's American history. And so that is an essential piece for us to understand, and it makes a positive and needed and necessary impact on our country. And if we knew, if that happened, maybe some of the things that are happening today would be eradicated. So thank you very much. And now we're going to have Dr. Maddie Yoon come up to discuss the Black Archives. Dr. Maddie Yoon.
Well, welcome everyone. I'm happy to be here. I'm director of the Southeastern Regional Black Archives Research Center and Museum. And the presentation that I'll be providing will help you understand or provide some tips on how you can utilize museums and integrate them into your curriculum. I have a presentation I'll bring up here shortly. And I'm sure that you'll have some questions, so feel free to chime in and we can navigate that. All right, but museums and me. First, the museum is free, and a lot of the museums across the state of Florida have nominal fees, but with the law that the African American History Task Force abides by, it is highly likely that your institution, your school, has some funds to pay for admission or travel, but also sometimes your museums have resources that can help your students arrive to the museum and participate. So reaching out, and that'll be one of the things we'll start to talk about here, reaching out to your museum to find out what resources are available, but integrating cultural enhancements into the curriculum is also a part of the law. All right, so to frame this concept of utilizing museums, you have knowledge, whether it's a priori or posteriori knowledge, and it harkens back to philosophers describing how people receive information and understand information. Are you going to allow what is presented, what is understood to be history, to remain the fact, or are you going to continue to research and find ways to present the history in a manner that is fully accurate? I'll give you some examples. Christopher Columbus has a holiday in the United States in October. I believe it's the second or third Monday in October, and he is recognized for discovering America or the Americas, and a famed individual in our history books. But if you read the book and look at the research followed up by Howard Zinn, The People's History of the United States, and other resources, we understand now that he was responsible for genocide of the Native Americans that were here, and quite honestly, may not have been fully responsible for discovering America. Now you have that is a sensitive topic. Also, Abraham Lincoln, as far as his full role in or intent to free African Americans or free the enslaved. There's a 1859 debate between he and Stephen Douglas as he was running for president that provides quotes to share Abraham Lincoln's real perspective on slavery, and that he was concerned about the mixing of races, that he was concerned about, whether or not needing to free the slaves could help to bring the Union together. If he could allow the enslaved to remain enslaved until 1899, then, and still bring the Union back together, he was all for that. That would eradicate a lot of our HBCUs that we have today. But these are sensitive topics. I know in the previous presentation, the question of how do we get parents or reluctant parents and students to be engaged in some of these sensitive topics. That's how museums can help, or other cultural institutions, because these institutions are responsible. They are funded to augment some of these issues. So find those topics. One entity that addressed the Holocaust, Facing History and Ourselves, was specifically geared toward trying to find the best way to teach students about that sensitive topic of 6 million Jews being slaughtered or murdered as a result of Adolf Hitler. And how do you address that terrible part of history? But it was done. Native Americans have a lot of federal funding to find a way to address that topic. Now, African American history, we've had some challenges as far as our topic, but in the 1960s, there was a law enacted to say a just society, a growing society, a strong society has to understand the many cultures and many diverse cultures in your society. So with that, we have found that a lot of teachers are unaware that the museums in their community are there to serve and augment. As a matter of fact, Leon County, which is an exemplary school, utilizes our museum, the Black Archives, quite often, Gaston County as well. Call ahead, ask, we have this topic that we are addressing in a month or 2 months. We schedule a date. How can we address that? Whether it's a scavenger hunt, it is some type of engaging activity. So that staff is responsible for coming up with activities or tours dealing with women history, African Americans in the military, African Americans in medicine and science, of the variety of topics. And so when those students arrive, they are heavily engaged. And you see the statistic there. So as we move forward, we have the content standards that the Black Archives and a lot of museums utilize to ensure that what they offer, what we offer, fully engages the audience. Southeastern Regional Black Archives, we're specifically providing exhibitions of the 13 galleries we have to augment African American identity and how African Americans have contributed to the strengths of society. And that's how we approach it, not just contributing to society as a whole, but there are strengths, specific growth points and intellectual property, inventions. As a matter of fact, Senator Tony Hill, he mentioned it earlier, but a few months ago, he began leading a charge about the value of the song Lift Every Voice and Sing. And Lift Every Voice and Sing, the song, was not just the national anthem because it moved you. Turns out that in crafting that song, there are a lot of cultural elements to the song that help understand where African Americans were and the rise of the Black middle class. There was a professor that published a book, Dr. Timothy Askew, I believe, that actually examines that in depth. And so he asked, how can we look at this piece of consciousness and exhibit that? Well, our museum took that charge and found a way to host an activity. And it was a own request. We've had teachers ask, what can we do about women's history? The 19th Amendment is coming up as a celebration of suffrage, which will be August of this year. And although we've had some delays here of late because of stay-at-home orders and COVID and the economic downturn, we've had to look at how we can delay the exhibition. But as a result of teachers and a couple of students asking how are we going to address the 19th Amendment, we actually pulled together from our collection dolls, African-American dolls that were 100, 120 years old, and we started to craft an exhibition that will look at African-American beauty, the aesthetic, and the role of women in popular culture, television, and medicine, and politics. But that came as a result of teachers and students trying to find a way to augment. We have access, most museums, if they're collecting, they collect items and artifacts based on a collection policy. So the collection policy of a museum is going to have themes and topics that they are trying to capture and preserve, and they have funding to do so. And by engaging your museum, you can help craft the next couple of years. We have professors on campus actually that will call up and say, well, in the class I'm teaching in the spring, here we are in August, or however, in the spring, I'll be teaching a class looking at sports and sports leadership. Do you have anything in your archives or an exhibit that you can present during a certain month? And it is our responsibility to find a way to augment those topics and support that. So some exercises from my experience, I will tell you a little bit about myself. I know you have access to a bio, but I've had the opportunity to lead music museums, art museums, history museums, a variety of genres, not just African-American history. And so there are a lot of exercises that have risen to the top through trial and error. One old example would be the art of letter writing. Not a lot of people write letters anymore. Matter of fact, from what I understand, some students don't even know how to read cursive writing. We have an exhibit in the museum that we have to provide a text illustration of what the manumission paper actually says, because students are coming through and looking at it as a piece of artwork, not as a document where you can read and see exactly how much a slave was sold for. But the art of letter writing can be a good pre and post activity. One example would be to have your students and teachers write a letter to a grandparent about what they anticipate seeing when they go to the museum, and write a follow-up letter to the parent and actually put it in the mail, follow-up letter sharing what they actually learned, or a letter to each other, and read it within the class. But as you can see, these are content standards that are utilized in the classroom, but also as we look at sensitive topics, we have some sensitive topics today. the role of the African American, the fear of the African American male, identity, fear of the police and how to address those. What is your role? The social contract that we could talk about as far as Thomas Hobbes and Thomas Paine, Common Sense and Leviathan, those classic American constitutional undergirdings of our society, and how the African American fits into that. You have the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, and we're about to look at Juneteenth. What is it to be a citizen? What is it to be a good citizen? What is your role? Well, there are conversations that can be had, and sometimes people can take a light way at it. Maybe your role is just to document and share, or do you actually get engaged and try to help? But what are the consequences of the Civil War? What is the lost cause? You know, what are some of these topics that it's hard to talk about? Well, find out what your student knows and then ask the museum to provide a tour that can directly address some of the facts of that element and see how the students retain that information and the follow. In the Black Archives, we have an exhibit that looks at Jim Crow and the KKK. We actually have a constitution that we've digitized and we can make available to teachers that you can read to see exactly how some of these organizations in the 1920s were organized. But KKK uniforms, some of the literatures like the leopard spots that were utilized are on display, but also some of the more derogatory elements of the times of Jim Crow. Primer books that shows African Americans blacker than black. The Aunt Jemima depiction, so you can actually talk about not just history, but the marketing and the strategic placement of some of the music. And so, again, you can provide the synthesis and application in a manner that you're writing across the curriculum. You are engaging different subjects, not just history, but you are allowing the students, black and white, to take away something and understand what it is to be a citizen, or what these consequences are, and how are you impacted? How are you affected? So here's some more projects, and there is this presentation, although I've added a few things that you'll see, this PowerPoint is available for distribution and download. But these are some projects that I've come across over my 20 or so years that have been very successful. List 4 lines with alternating rhyme that describes it. So we'll get into that a little bit later. That's a cipher or rhyming. I come up from an age where it was fun to see if you could stay within rhythm of a music beat, and if your friend or peer rhymes and puts out a line, you need to take their line or 2 words from that line and come back with another rhyme and be on topic as well. So it shows creativity, versatility, and unfortunately for me, it needed rhythm, and I didn't always have that, but I participated in that. But this is a good way to engage students hands-on. You can come across an artifact in the museum. You can get a list of the artifacts ahead of time. Most museums within their collection policy, they have a summary. Even if it's not online, they have a summary of artifacts that will fit the topic that you're addressing. A simple email will do, and they can email you the list of artifacts that they have, or you can anticipate seeing on display or have available on display if it's not on display. And you can have your students prepare activities ahead of time. Describe a good day and bad day in the life of a selected figure. You saw the figure before in the previous slide. Our museum presents African art, African American art as well. And one of the genres of art that's always intriguing is the role of African art. Not just that the art is somewhat unique to the eye, but the role in spiritual and religious practices, and the fact that a mask captured the characteristic of an ancestor, and so you would have a king or a prince wearing several masks around their belt, around their waist. The mask is not necessarily meant to be worn on your face, but to be with you so you can have the characteristics of your ancestors in battle, in decision making, and planning and execution. What do these characters mean to you when you see that? The Yoruba tribe was known for having far more percentages of twins. And so the fertility doll comes from that tribe. And so you would see the doll that has the round face and the point on the top of the face. And what does that mean? So you engage. You just don't have to rely on the perceived knowledge of what that artifact represents. Try to engage and make that artifact come to life. Now, using a cell phone, generally some museums do not allow cell phones, but if you call ahead, you can request an activity or an area in the museum where selfies can be taken and placed on Facebook, and you can take advantage of the use of video. And you'll see later we could talk about utilizing PowerPoints, which is a very dynamic way to utilize computer technology, subject matter, create hands-on skills and engage group activity as well. But using a cell phone, create a debate platform and provide a voiceover for pics or video. So you can actually set up a panel discussion of 15 minutes when you go back to your classroom or before you go to the museum to really dig into some of the topics. You don't have to rely on just the text panels that are provided in the museum. And you see these other activities, write a short story about in the life of double consciousness. Double consciousness was a concept that comes from W.B. Du Bois' book on his book, The Souls of Black Folk, meaning that an African-American steps out the front door. Is he American or African-American? Triple consciousness. A woman would be a lady, an African-American, as well as American.
Hey, Dr. Marietta.
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, do you have that PowerPoint up? We can see it, or are we going to provide it? Because people are asking about that PowerPoint.
Oh, I thought I was sharing the screen.
No.
Yeah.
I'm just running my mouth.
So, and it's so interesting because there's some of those dolls. I definitely want to see those dolls.
Okay, let me go back. So, Karen.
And we're going to, what we'll be able to do, let me ask you this, Dr. Mannion, because we're pushing past the 2 o'clock hour.
Okay.
Will you be able to also, and I know another thing too about Dr. Mannion, and we were kind of talking about this, Dr. Mannion, he will be back on Wednesday as well. And so maybe some of the ones that we missed, but will you be able to share your slides in the app, Dr. Mannion?
Yes, so this entire PowerPoint is available.
So I'll upload it today and
download.
make sure
Okay.
everybody has it in the app.
So here we go.
That he's already aligned to the Florida standards, and that's what we're looking for.
Right.
So that's an excellent thing.
Yeah,
All right.
so thank you, Dr. Kelly, for catching that. I thought I was sharing all along, but as you can see, we have, throughout our museum, we have the 13 galleries aligned. How much time do I have left? So no time. So
Well,
I will be following up with a part 2, and so here are the activities here.
And you had so many questions too, Dr. Mannion. You have a lot of questions, and what I think, like we said, we will you will have that session on Wednesday, but we will push out to everyone your slides.
Okay.
We'll push out to everyone your slides, and so maybe take about 5 more minutes to tie up, and we can, it's okay. Just kind of like close it out.
Okay.
Okay.
So these are the points on the sports, and maybe we could, I guess, take a couple of questions. These are different pieces of music. As you can see, museums can be versatile. Sometimes artifacts are in the archives, and museums are looking for reasons. Museums are looking for reasons to bring these artifacts out. So actually, teachers, you can make a museum professional's day. You can say, hey, we need to see written manuscripts and documents. And so you have an archivist like, like me, who are looking forward to finding that, we have now displayed the first edition of the Frederick Douglass Narrative of a Slave, first edition of Uncle Tom's Cabin, signed copies by Phyllis Wheatley's and her books of poems. And we look for opportunities to bring those out. I end with this, and I'll follow up with some points and art on Wednesday. But how many of you, and Ms. Hall, if you can help me out here, how many of you can name 3 female Black artists? And I'm gonna take one away from you while you start to name. Augusta Savage from Jacksonville, Florida, was inspired by the Johnson brothers and created a piece of art, Lift Every Voice and Sing, and it won an award in 1939. So I take that artist off the table. Any other artists? Female artists?
To chat about it?
No, just to make a case in point that there's a lot to the culture that can be explored, and there's a lot of many points of culture that we as leaders may not be familiar with.
So I'm trying to understand. I have some feedback from somebody's phone. I mean, somebody's computer. Okay, I'm not. So you want them to chat the answer, Dr. Matthew? And you know they can't talk.
Right, but they can type the answer and you call it out.
Yeah. So you all chat the answer and let's see what you all are saying here.
Hey, Dr. Matthew, and it seems like everybody is stumped. This is Dr. Kelly. Just like, I always ask, can you name more than 15 famous African Americans in history? Most people can't go beyond 15.
So they're stuck.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and that's where the point was. That's where museums come in to play.
Right.
Take advantage of the research that we deal with day in and day out to augment what you're trying to do in the classroom. And so you'll come across topics where you're going to be stuck, but you want to provide enlightenment to your students. Well, there are institutions in your area that's their job and responsibility to provide that level of enlightenment. So. All right. Based on time, Ms. Hall, I think we'll provide the part 2 on Wednesday, and we'll dive into African American music and African American art.
Okay, sounds good. I'm not sure. I'm gonna go here, and we're gonna just stop sharing your screen. If you can stop sharing it. All right. Very good. Very good. We still are spotlighted with we're still spotlighting Camille with Dr. Matthew. All right, thank you so much. I mean, very extraordinarily informative session. Dr. Matthew, he was so into his information, and we were so engaged. The slideshow wasn't going, so. And we're working here on the other end, trying to get a lot more people on, Dr. Kelly. So we still have people.
And we have people who have raised their hands, so I don't want to neglect them because they've had them up for a while.
Okay. And I think some people also were raising their hands as it related to, they were raising their hands too, like when some of the questions were answered. Mm-hmm. So let's look at those raised hands. I'm trying to find them. Can you call them out, Dr. Kelly? I don't even see the raised hands.
Dr. Ganache has the hand raised.
Okay.
Miriam Campos has their hand raised, so I don't know if they had something in particular, if they would put it in the chat so we can address it.
Right, if you have a question, let's look at some of the questions we have. That's maybe what we'll do. Camille, he's still spotlighted.
I just lowered all the hands, so.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's look at, so if anyone can put your questions in, I'm gonna ask the questions that are in here right now, and then some of them we'll definitely have to get back to them. And again, as Dr. Kelly said, I'm going to answer this question for multiple ones. There are one of our main keynote or main presenters who will be with us the majority of the day tomorrow, where you said, where can I find specific math lessons? Are there documents and information for teachers in other counties? Information just about lesson plans and those things. Dr. Chika Akua, how do we incorporate portrait studies of a variety of disciplines? Dr. Akua will be providing us with a plethora of information as it relates to these questions. And so please know that. Again, a biology teacher looking for ways to implement history, African American history into your curriculum. Dr. Akua will address all of those questions, and I'm going to encourage you, if you have the app, to actually look at those sessions tomorrow, and you can put your question into the app so that we'll be looking at those on tomorrow when Dr. Akua, as he is shaping his presentation. So all of those questions like that, we'll do that. If you do not have the app, we will be making, if you're unable to download the app, we will be making these documents available on the task force events website. So at the start of the day tomorrow, you will have the recording from today. So Dr. Madayun will have the recording from today. You will have the documents from today. So whatever we're uploading into the app, much of that we'll be putting on the website as well. Does that make sense? So you will have that information because many of you cannot access the app for multiple reasons, and we want everyone to get all of the information that you actually need and that you're looking for. Now, again, because this is a webinar format, I know you may raise your hands and things like that, like Dr. Kelly said. And I know many of you were raising your hands when people would ask a question. But if you have a question that you want us to look at, just go ahead and put it in the Q&A feature and we'll look at them. All of them we won't be able to answer live. I'm trying to answer many of them by text. But please feel free to continue the dialogue. The chat will be made available for download on the website. The recordings will be made available, and any document that the speakers share. So there will be pages on the website that you will be able to access all of that information. Dr. Kelly, you want to have something?
Yes, I just want one more thing. A couple people have asked about lesson plans, and we do have lesson plans. And as you all get ready for Rudy, if you allow me to share my screen, I'm going to
yes, ma'am.
One example of a lesson plan that we have uploaded on the website. Can you see my lesson plan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is one that's for grade 6 that's been uploaded already. And if you notice, it's already been aligned with the Next Generation Sunshine State Standards, and a description. And this is generally the format. Marion Williams, who is a task force member, will address some of this tomorrow when she speaks. We have activities, we have it laid out, we have links, it's already been vetted, and it's also been shared on CPOM. So we do have this resource available on the African American History Task Force website under Educator Resources. And we have over 250 lesson plans. We've not uploaded them all, but we will. And so that gives a reason to keep coming back. If you don't see your grade band, keep checking back because it'll be there. Thank you. That's what I just want to share. Also acknowledge two other our task force members are online, Tracy Oliver and Marion Williams. They're both online, but they're being clandestine, they're being participants and soaking it all in. But again, thank everybody so far for hanging in. We love you. And that's it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly. And now, if you all need to take a stretch, or Dr. Gibson, we may need to do our breathe in, breathe out, but you need to go ahead and hold on to your seat. You need to go ahead and hold on to your seat because we're going to have Dr. Rudy Jameson, and he's going to get us, again, powered up and ready to grow because we're going to be educated, equipped, and engaged in order to help us to be civically engaged. And so we're going to not take another moment, Dr. Jameson, and you go ahead and take your time and get it done. And we are going to bring on Dr. Rudy Jameson.
Thank you, Roxy. Can you hear me?
Yes, and we're good too.
Okay.
All right.
That works. So first of all, I want to make sure that I thank the Commission of Educators, African American History Task Force for providing this opportunity and this space for us to interact. The Honorable Tony Hill, Board Chair, Dr. Bernadette Kelly, Principal Investigator, thank you for finding it worth me sharing some time with you all today. To the Florida Department of Education for sponsoring this event, to Vanguard Solutions, Roxy, Camille, thank you guys for creating the infrastructure for this to take place. My name is Rudy Jamison. I'm a native of Jacksonville, Florida, a proud graduate of Jean Ribault Senior High School, Florida A&M University, and the University of North Florida. I currently work at the University of North Florida's in the College of Education, and I'm the Assistant Director in our Center for Urban Education and Policy, as well as faculty in the College of Education as well. And so I do a lot of work around teacher education. I do a lot of work around community initiatives, and I do a lot of work around this idea of racial equity and social justice. So today for the keynote, I'd like to share some context with you, number one. And number two, I'd like to share some strategies as it relates to the implications of African American history on civic engagement. Roxy, I'll be pausing periodically just to address some of the polling and raise hands that occurs during the dialogue. I'll also have a Q&A at the very end so we can answer some of those questions that arise. So Roxy talked about prophetic foresight of the commission and Dr. Kelly to come up with the theme, civic engagement, and how apropos during this socio-cultural climate that we're living in right now, that we're talking about civic engagement and its implications on African American history, or African Americans' history implications on civic engagement. I'm a big fan of communication, so I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Earlier, Dr. Gibson Alonzo gave you all some definitions of civic engagement, but I want to share an operational definition that we'll be using throughout this dialogue so that we're on the same page. I want to define civic engagement as active participation in the public life of a community in an informed, committed, and constructive manner with a focus on the common good. And for the very first poll, I want to see how many of us agree on this particular definition. So I'm trying to share it. There it is. Thank you, Camille. And we'll pause to get some feedback here.
So if we can ever have everyone go ahead and answer the poll, that'll be phenomenal.
Yeah, so it's running now, Roxy.
Yes, I see it.
I got two people that disagree. For those two people that disagree, please put that in the Q&A or in the chat so we can make sure we address that. Those three people. And Roxy, when you see those three comments, interrupt me so we can make sure we address that. I want to make sure everybody's on the same page. All right. So it looks like most of the people are finished polling. All right. So in terms of the implications of African American history on civic engagement, I think there's a historical context. I think there's an ahistorical context that's worth discussing. And I also think there's this new violence perpetuated on marginalized Black communities. So when we think about the historical context, historically, Black folk haven't been free to civically engage. The plurality of civic engagement can be seen as a freedom, and it has not been kind to us. So when we hear we and all, they were never meant to include us, i.e. we the people, liberty and justice for all men are created equal, all of your constitutional amendments. So as a history, in terms of civic engagement and how civic engagement has been constructed, it wasn't constructed to include Black folk. And I don't think we can talk about civic engagement without talking about the history of civic engagement. So I'd like for you to keep that in mind. There's also an ahistorical context associated with this. An ahistorical meaning the implications of the absence of African-American history on civic engagement. For a second poll, I'd like to hear how many of you have ever heard Toni Morrison's A Bench by the Road? Okay. So as I read A Bench by the Road, I want you to hear it in the context of looking through an ahistorical lens as it relates to the implications of African-American history on civic engagement. There is no place you or I can go to think about, or even not think about, to summon the presences of, or recollect the absences of, slaves. There's no suitable memorial, or plaque, or reef, or wall, or park, or skyscraper lobby. There's no 300-foot tower. There's no small bench by the road. There's not even a tree scored, an initial that I can visit, or you can visit in Charleston, or Savannah, or New York, or Providence, or better still, on the banks of the Mississippi. And because such a place doesn't exist, the book had to. The World, 1989. And if I'm not mistaken, this was published also in 2006. So when we think about the idea of slaves and the ideology of slavery, it wasn't until 2018 when Brian Stevenson, who I'll talk a little bit about later, founded the museum and the memorial regarding lynching. So, and we'll get into that a little bit. Another ahistorical context is less than 2% of our teacher population is African-American male. So I told you I work out of the Center for Urban Education and Policy in University of North Florida's College of Education and Human Services. And there I direct an urban education scholars program where I go out and I recruit students from historically underrepresented populations who are interested in pursuing careers in education. And if you've ever tried to recruit, particularly Black males, to major in teacher education, even when a scholarship is being provided, then you know the struggle is real. It's extremely difficult to find Black males who are interested in becoming teachers. Not only becoming teachers, but pursuing a career in education. So over the past 10 years at the University of North Florida, out of the College of Education, we have probably only graduated 7 Black males from Duval County. Now, we provide more teacher educators and administrators to the Duval County public school system, as well as the other 4 surrounding counties, than any other institution in Northeast Florida, by far. And we've only graduated 7 Black males from Duval County over the past 10 years. Right now, we have 7 in one cohort. So in the Alpha cohort, which is the first cohort, I have 8 males, 7 Black males, 1 Hispanic male, all from Duval County. In the second cohort, the Beta cohort, who will start in the fall, I have 8 African-American women, 1 Black male, and 1 Hispanic male. And I'm offering 10 of these scholarships every year. And I literally post up at the high schools. I have information sessions with student and parents. I meet every counselor in the Title I schools because the students have to come from underrepresented populations. They also have to be Pell eligible. So I'm literally in these high schools all the time recruiting these students. I say that to say that if we aren't diversifying our teacher education pipeline, then the information that our students are receiving is limited to the perspectives of those who are teaching them, which in most cases is over 80% white female. And then the third context I want us to consider is there's a new violence perpetrated on marginalized populations. And I like to call this violence epistemological violence. And when we think about epistemology is how do we come to know what we know? Earlier you heard Dr. Matty Yoon talk about the African American archives, right? And that history. If we aren't aware of that history, then it limits the purview of possibility, particularly for our youth. If they don't understand that greatness exists within them, if all they see and all they consume is a narrative of less than, then that's what they're going to believe. And I think our epistemology drives our belief system. So I want you to
Dr. Jameson, you told me to interrupt you with this, and it came out. The two people that disagreed.
Let's go.
One person, Frances Gordon, said she disagreed with the entire statement.
Okay.
And one person said common good is too subjective, i.e. separate but equal.
Right. Okay. So I want us to consider this definition in terms of African American history on civic engagement. Now, I don't think we all can agree. If we have any white folk who are not aware of some African American history, I'm not sure that we can agree at this particular instance that we're at the same place. But I think we can agree that we all want to go into the same place. And when I say the same place, I mean, as it relates to civic engagement, we need to make sure that African American history is a consideration. It's a factor in the equation when we're talking about civic engagement. So hopefully that addresses some of the ambiguity with the definition.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want us to think about this idea of epistemological violence, right? In schools, in K through 12, undergraduate and graduate schools. As my friend and mentor Rodney Lawrence Hirsch would say, the American history that is taught is incomplete, it's dishonest, and it's racist. And it does not do African history, African American history, nor civil rights history any justice. That's in schools. I want us to hold on to that thought for a minute. K-12, undergraduate, and graduate schools. Earlier, Dr. Austin talked about the curriculum, and Dr. Kelly talked about the legislative requirements that African American history is being taught. And I think there's a difference between legislation and the enforcement of legislation. I can tell you in Jacksonville, Florida, in Duval County, we can do a better job at implementing African American history, African American history, civil rights history into our curriculums. We can do a better job at the University of North Florida. In the spring of 2019, we graduated 80 plus teacher interns. Of those 80 plus teacher interns, there wasn't one Black male. Of those 80 plus teacher interns, there was only 2 Black females. And I can tell you, as it relates to the faculty in the College of Education, we don't have the capacity to appropriately teach African American history, especially as it relates to how we civically engage. So we can do a better job there. I would also submit that in Black neighborhoods and communities, the cardinal contributions of African Americans are not lifted in ways that illustrate hope, courage, and possibility. I think leadership looks different in the Black community than it does in our major nonprofit and corporate organizations. I grew up in a neighborhood called Out East, the historic East Side in Jacksonville, Florida, and there is rich history there. And when you go out east today, there is almost like a cult. There's a loyalty that exists to that particular neighborhood that doesn't exist in a lot of other neighborhoods. But leadership looks different. I'll give you a perfect example. I run a nonprofit called Leadership is for Everyone. The acronym is LIFE. And in trying to procure funding for some of the programming that we'd like to do, I invited 5 of the major philanthropic organizations out east to engage in a community learning exchange. During that learning exchange, we walked down to the East Side Brotherhood, which is a distressed asset out east. And when I say asset, I do mean asset, to eat lunch. As we're eating lunch, a friend of mine who I grew up with was walking down the street hot. And I mean, Dodo was hot. And as Dodo is walking down the street, Spody tries to engage with him. Dragon tries to engage with him. Loretta comes out the kitchen. She tries to engage with him. Another elder tries to engage with him. And as the elder was trying to engage with him, Dodo picked up a brick and he was getting ready to hit Dragon with it. A police rolls around the corner. He gets the brick out of Dodo's hand, takes Dodo off, and I'm sitting at the lunch table with these philanthropists. And I'm asking them, okay, y'all tell me, let's dissect this. What just went on? Who talked to Dodo? Spody, Loretta, Dragon, Elder. Would any of those people, do they look like leaders in your organizations? Absolutely not. Well, that's how leadership looks out here. How do we build capacity in those people who are closest to the issues so we can create healthier, more sustainable neighborhoods? So when I talk about Black neighborhoods and communities and the cardinal contributions of African Americans, we got to make sure that we are building capacity in those people. In the world of work, I think the Black experience is not considered or attended to. I did a lot of my doctoral research centers around Black leadership development. And one of the elements or constructs that I look at is called nigrescence. And nigrescence means being Black in the face of white supremacy. And what my research gets at, it gets at the contortionism, the self-monitoring, the self-imposed bilarity that Black folk have to impute on themselves in order to survive in the world of work. And I think that's important for us to consider as it relates to civic engagement as well. So I want us to keep this idea of epistemological violence in mind. And before I shift into strategies, I think it's fair for us to consider that for most people, civic engagement is an afterthought. I can't tell you how many calls, texts, emails I've gotten regarding today's socio-political climate, asking the question, what can I do? I can tell you, I do not have all of the answers, but I think these strategies will help you explore what it is that you can do and should be doing. Roxy, let's pause here and I'll answer any questions that we have right now.
Okay, because you had a couple. I'm
Okay.
trying to, I had a, teaching is a calling. And this was, I think, that was about when you talked about teaching in the profession. Teaching is a calling, but teachers must be paid and respected in their profession. So that was more of a statement, and I think it went to something that you said. And then I had one teacher asking about how to get more programs to get more Black teachers in the Panhandle, Black male teachers in the Panhandle, or so those are two.
All right, so those are basically two comments, and I want to comment on them, but I also want to share my contact information. Roxy, if you can make sure that those two people get my contact information, and I'd love to talk.
And what I'm going to say to everyone is this: we will have all contact information on the website, and it's in the app. You can actually dialogue directly with Dr. Jameson through the app feature, but all of his contact information actually is on the website. It's on the website and in the app. So that's the exciting thing about what we're doing, and we will go and visit those pages at the end, Dr. Jameson.
Okay.
So we have all of your contact info, your public contact information on the website, and our speakers will be, in fact, I'm sorry, I am doing multiple things here. Our speakers will, in fact, be updating their information as well. So speakers as you're here, presenters as you're here, any updated information you want to put on the website so that because we're going to have hundreds of educators that come through here, and we'll be able to share with them that way. Does that work, Dr. Jameson?
It works. Thank you much.
Right.
So in terms of those two comments, the first I absolutely agree with. Teaching is a calling, but teachers do need to be paid. As we exist under the current circumstances, I think there are opportunities. If we play this game called teaching at the highest of levels, we can make a good living at it, number one. And I think it's more morally gratifying the better we are at it. So I did want to address those. And what was the second one, Roxy? I don't want to skip.
There was someone in the Panhandle, and I can't actually find that one right now.
So if we can
here's one. Here's one for you, Doc. Could changing the opinion that teaching is women's work help in recruiting Black male teachers?
Absolutely. I think that's part of the work. So a lot of what I do in terms of research, my dean in the College of Education, and I are currently working with an impact study that shows it literally monetizes the value of having a Black male in front of the classroom. And that monetization is not just for African-American youth, it's for all youth. And when you ask a child how many African-American male teachers have they had, you will be astounded at the minimal number that they give you. But if you ask them how many have impacted their lives, and they may not necessarily be in the classroom, that's a totally different answer. So I absolutely agree, and that's part of the work, and that's the work that I'm working on to diversify the teacher education pipeline. And in order to do that, I got to change the narrative of what a teacher is, what a teacher looks like, and what becoming a teacher means.
All right, and then they have another question, Dr. Jameson. When you spoke about your scholarships, do those scholarships apply only to Duval County students?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And
can you maybe speak on that a little bit, where they can get information?
So I'll give you a perfect example.
Okay.
The first year that we did this was 2018, starting in probably October of 2017. So spring 2018 or spring 2019, I was still recruiting. I didn't have any candidates before March of 2018. Of my first cohort, 6 of those gentlemen came from Andrew Jackson High School, 1 came from Robert E. Lee, and the other came from Mandarin. But it wasn't until May that I had that complete 8 cohort, right? Let's fast forward 2020. I'm posted up at every Title I high school in Jacksonville, Florida, trying to give away these scholarships. And I couldn't. I didn't fulfill my obligation of 10 candidates for the Urban Education Scholars Program for the beta cohort until May of 2020. So there is absolutely opportunity for students from other districts to take advantage of these scholarships. And these scholarships it encourages them to come and live on campus. And the way that the scholarship is set up is the scholarship is worth $6,000. The students have to be Pell eligible. So we encourage them to apply early. They can get up to $6,500 in terms of Pell Grant. And then there's another $6,000 gap. And they can apply for different scholarships within the University of North Florida's system to accommodate for that gap. And generally it's like first generation scholarships. We have a Hicks scholarship. And there are a few other scholarships that they can apply for. But it's one simple application, and it applies them to all of those scholarships.
You made a statement about, let me ask the question for you. Okay. What kind of leadership is leadership within the face of white supremacy? I could not hear that statement. Can you repeat it?
Yes. So there's a construct called nigrescence, and there's a psychometric instrument called the cross-racial identity scale. And that cross-racial identity scale sits on a continuum between pro-Black, anti-white, reimagination, self-hatred, and multiculturalism, right? And nigrescence simply means being Black in the face of white supremacy. When you add constructs like self-monitoring, developmental relationships, and career mobility to nigrescence, that gives you the leadership development construct. And I can share that on my screen.
And you want to come back when you because you have a couple more questions too after you do that one. Okay.
Let me share this first. So this is a construct right here, right? Black men's perceptions of leadership development.
You took the screen away, Doc.
Did I?
Well, it's from,
share it.
You had it up a minute ago.
I got it. Here it is.
Okay.
All right. So this is the conceptual framework of Black leadership development that I constructed, right? And I just want to deal with, and I'll talk about this a little later. Wednesday, we can take a deeper dive into this. But I want to talk about the 4 constructs at the very bottom: developmental relationships, career mobility, self-monitoring, and nigrescence, right? And I want to talk about career mobility first. Career mobility deconstructs into contest mobility and social mobility. Contest mobility simply means how good I am at what I do, right? And social mobility means who I know and who knows me. Developmental relationships are mentor relationships, sponsor relationships, and protege relationships. And there's a lot of research around mentorships and how many mentors you should have. And it's called a developmental network. The president of Morehouse College recently published an article that said most organizations in the United States are ill prepared to deal with the race conversation. And he said that because most of them, within their developmental network, within their relationship constellation, there aren't any Black males. And if they're missing that perspective, it's hard for them to understand that perspective. So we talk about those 2 constructs: career mobility, developmental relationships, and we attach them to self-monitoring. Self-monitoring is how behaviorally flexible am I to alter my identity in white spaces, right? And how socially perceptive am I? How able am I to walk into a room and work the room, particularly when it's not of my native social cultural preference, right? And then nigrescence, once again, is being Black in the face of white supremacy. And the result of all of this research says that the more ambitious I am in terms of my career, the more mobile I want to be, right? The more developmental relationships I have to have, and the stronger developmental relationships I have to have. Leadership development and career mobility does not happen in silo, right? So those development relationships are important, right? But if I'm married to my identity, if I'm unapologetically Black, at the top of every institution in America sits a white male. And if that white male is not receptive to my identity as being unapologetically Black, then those development relationships are going to be hard to come by, because I'm not willing to self-monitor. I'm not behaviorally flexible, and I don't want to be socially perceptive because I am married to my Blackness. So that's how these 4 constructs are threaded together, right? So when we talk about Black leadership development, I think we need to talk about these socio-cultural determinants that hinder Black leadership development. So I'll jump more into that on Wednesday, but I did want to go back to
okay. I guess this question on Dr. Jameson kind of segues or works along what you're saying, and may have answered it, but I do want to they're popping in here quite a bit here. Okay. We also have to work on changing, and the answer you just gave about the white supremacy question, I think the one you just answered, right. They said, thanks a lot. This is awesome. I need to learn more as I'm finishing my dissertation. I can't wait for this presentation. I think this also works for Black women too. Oh, and so that was the response there. Then we also had the question statement. We also have to work on changing the mindset of people when it comes to leadership. You spoke to that. Teachers are leaders too. What are your suggestions to help to adjust the mindsets of others when it comes to teacher leaders?
Yeah, I think we have to manage up, right? And I think there's an educative opportunity for us to teach people in leadership positions how to look at leadership different. Earlier, I talked about the indigenous leadership of that out east community, right? And Spody is a preeminent leader in that community. Well, what I was trying to do with those philanthropists, when I asked them, let's dissect what just happened, I wanted to shift their mindsets and help them to see that leadership doesn't just look like your organization. Leadership doesn't just look like the hierarchical, hegemonic organizational structure that you're used to. When you come into neighborhoods like this, particularly if you are in this space and these are the people that you intend to serve, leadership looks different. And we have to be more open-minded to explore and examine and build capacity in those people who are closest to the issues.
All right, thank you so much. And I'm going to make another statement, if you don't mind, Dr. Jameson. I'm talking to our panelists. We have a myriad of questions coming in that I think some of our panelists can actually type answers to, because they're not all for you, Dr. Jameson.
Right.
So panelists, if you are answering them, if you can answer them live instead of privately, that'll be great. And so we have a lot of questions, but Dr. Jameson, this is for you. Where I teach, when I was first hired in 1998, there were so many Black teachers, and I think this is more of a statement question. Now, in the past 8 years, the majority of teachers hired have been other than Black. The one Black male teacher, there was an attempt made to fire him. The union rep fought up on his behalf and stopped it. I have been at the location over 20 years, and I have been a victim of discrimination because of lies by whites in the system, in leadership, and a handful of Blacks are not supporting. How do you fight this? And this was an open question that everyone could see, so I'm just reading it to you, okay?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, fighting scenarios like that, it's all about relationships, right? Since the beginning of Black folk being in America, we weren't only fighting by ourselves, right? A lot of the advantages, a lot of the changes, the social changes that have taken place have been in partnership and in collaboration with what I like to call abolitionist allies. And we have to find those abolitionist allies. We have to find those people who are willing to stand in the gap with us, right, to make sure that racial equity and social justice is manifest. I've had 6 jobs at the University of North Florida, possibly 7. I started out as a research assistant in the Department of Leadership, School Counseling, and Sport Management, which sits in the College of Education. And my boss was Dr. Chris Jansen. I've had 5 jobs since then, and all of them have been because of Dr. Chris Jansen. And he's a white abolitionist ally. Had it's not for Chris Jansen, I wouldn't be able to do the work that I'm doing at the University of North Florida right now. And I think there's a linguistic challenge associated with that as well. We live this experience. White folk, particularly those in academia, I think Dr. Matty-Yoon talked about a priori knowledge. Every course I took in my doctoral program, I was told, Rudy, your lived experience is cool, but it doesn't mean anything without empirically examined evidence. Okay, where do I go get that from, right? Well, I'm not Black, I don't know, right? So we're stuck out here, floundering, trying to figure this thing out for ourselves. And I think we gotta, we as emerging leaders, we as leaders, we have to exhibit a help-seeking behavior amongst each other and amongst other leaders so that we can collaborate with these abolitionist allies and make sure that change is taking place. And this is a peculiar time in our country right now. And I'll talk about that a little later. Can I finish this, Roxy?
Yes, I didn't know what you wanted me to do.
So I want to go into these 3 strategies, right?
Okay.
Strategies that strengthen civic engagement for African Americans, right? And I look at these strategies in 3 developmental domains. One is development of self, one is developmental networks, and the other is advocacy. When we think about development of self, It's really about personal mastery, right? Peter Senge calls this personal mastery. Elliot Eisner calls it connoisseurship. Malcolm Gladwell calls it the 10,000 hour theory. But we have to be better tomorrow than we were yesterday, every day. It's an existential fact that Black folk have to be twice as good for half as much. That's just our reality. That's something that we have to do. Let's take the protests, for instance. How many of you can name any police reforms that we need to be addressing, like not just locally, regionally, and nationally? How many of you can name the police reforms we need to be addressing to minimize police brutality on Black folk? Camille, can you put up that poll for me? I think it's already constructed. Yeah, okay, so please select the number of national police reforms you're familiar with regarding the law enforcement officer brutality as it relates to African Americans. Okay, so that's pretty good. So there's a website I want to take you to that shows us 8 Can't Wait, right? And it's really 8 police reforms that have been demonstrated to minimize police brutality. So here are the 8 right here. Share those. So let's look at how many of these have passed legislation in Jacksonville, Florida. So only 3 of these are being enforced or are legislatively passed in Jacksonville, Florida.
Rudy, we don't see the reforms.
You can't see them?
No.
Okay, here are the 4. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
go ahead and put it in presentation.
Can you see the 8 boxes? No?
No.
All right, so they're banned chokehold and stranglehold, required de-escalation, require warning before shooting, requires exhaust all alternatives before shooting, duty to intervene, ban shooting at moving vehicles, require use of force continuum, require comprehensive reporting. And I ask this question simply because of all of the protesters that are protesting right now, how many of them are aware of not only those reforms, but how do I go and navigate and negotiate the state attorney's office? How do I navigate and negotiate law enforcement officers? How do I navigate and negotiate legislative and government officials in order to make sure that these reforms are being enforced, right? So it's more than just, civic engagement is more than just protesting, right? When we talk about policy, we also have to talk about people. And in order to talk about people, we got to build capacity in those people. I think therein lies the rub. There's an educative opportunity to be more civically engaged. Another one is the Equal Justice Initiative. And the Equal Justice Initiative was founded by Brian Stevenson, right? And he's a civil rights attorney in Montgomery, Alabama. And so when he formed the Equal Justice Initiative, he also is the founder of the Legacy and Lynching Museum and Memorial. And I think when So Equal Justice Initiative has partnered with every county in the South to identify every lynching that took place. And there were over 4,400 lynchings that took place. So when you walk through the memorial, you'll see a monument for every county in the South with the names of those individuals that were listed. There's also a community remembrance project where they're partnering with every county, and they want to do a soil sample collection for every lynching to be submitted to EJI. They also want to put a marker in the vicinity of where that lynching took place and eventually bring a monument to that county, a replica monument to that county. So that's the memorial. When you go into the museum, Brian Stevenson has beautifully chronicled the thread of slavery to mass incarceration. I mean, he literally talks about slavery to the 13th Amendment, which states that slavery is abolished except as punishment for a crime, to black codes, to convict leasing, to sharecropping, to Jim Crow, to mass incarceration, to Black Lives Matter. And with the Community Remembrance Project here in Jacksonville, the Center for Urban Education and Policy has partnered with 90 Forward, who heads up that program, and we're responsible for the programming. So I think that's another way to be civically engaged in ways that partner with abolitionist allies and move the needle. I want to shift, so that's development of self, right? I want to shift to developmental networks, and I talked about it when I talked about those developmental relationships. So I want to give you a perfect example of how this works. I told you I invited those philanthropists out east to visit with community members who were closest to the issues. And one of those community members is Suzanne Pickett, who heads up the Historic East Side Community Development Corporation. And she and I and a bunch of other folk have done a lot of work in that community, particularly the CDC. Well, there's this organization called Lift Jacks, and they're a national organization, and they use a community development model called the Purpose-Built Community Development Model. And there are four pillars to it. There's education, there's community wellness, there's financial vitality and sustainability, and then there's housing. So because we were doing so much of the work, we could demand that when they came out east, and they out of 15 neighborhoods, they have selected out east to be the community where they started their revitalization. And when we partnered with them, we said, you cannot come in here and apply that model without us partnering with you. So the way that this looks is, for each one of those pillars, there is a subcommittee, right? And for every subcommittee, there is a community resident, and then there is a community member, a business community member that co-chairs that subcommittee. And I think that's extremely important when I talk about collaborating with abolitionist allies. We couldn't revitalize this community without understanding and being able to navigate the spaces of government as it relates to housing, education, economic vitality, and community wellness. I co-chaired the education subcommittee with 2 business community members. And we partner, we have a healthy relationship with the district. We probably have a healthy relationship with the district than the university does, and the university provides teacher educators for the district. So this is a way that we all need to be more engaged as it relates to our developmental networks and to become more civically engaged. And then the last is advocacy. And advocacy is extremely important because we have to build a strong bench. When we look at our personal board of directors, our relationship constellation, our developmental networks, how many people are we mentoring to do the exact same work that we do? And when we look at those people, how diverse are those people? And I want to show you an example of how we in the Center for Urban Education and Policy are executing this idea of advocacy. 2 years ago, Rodney Hurst, who's a dear friend of mine, Rodney was 16 years old He was the president of the NAACP Youth Council in 1960. He led the 1960 sit-ins in Jacksonville, Florida. And on August 27th, 1960, there were 200 plus white men who got free axe handles from white men dressed in Confederate uniforms in downtown Jacksonville. And they beat up 38 plus high school students that were members of the NCAA Youth Council, right? So Rodney, I said to Rodney, I said, Rodney, we need to amplify this story more. He wrote a book called It Was Never About a Hot Dog and a Coke. And amazingly, everybody in Jacksonville does not know about that, right? So when we talked about curriculum and we talked about textbooks, right? This book has literally become a textbook for some students as it relates to the 1960 sit-in, because it's his account of not only just Axe Handle Saturday, but all of the 1960 sit-ins. And I mentioned this because we decided to do a mural. And the mural is sitting on the East Side Brotherhood, of which I'm a member of, that sits in that out East community. We took 25 plus high school students from all around Duval County. And for a year, we took them through curriculum and instruction around the 1960 sit-ins. That culminated in that mural. It was amazing to see the agency that those young people acquired during that process. I can remember a shooting taking place in the vicinity of where the mural was being constructed, and the youth, when the TV cameras came and they wanted to film near the mural, the students were saying, no, that shooting didn't take place here. You need to go where that shooting took place. But it was amazing to see the degree of agency that they acquired during that process. And I think the other piece is the advisor to the Youth Council in 1960 was Rutledge Pearson, who was an 8th grade social studies teacher. And that's the quintessential story of leadership development, especially as it relates to being a teacher. Somebody asked earlier, how can teachers, like teachers are leaders too, how can teachers have people reimagine how leadership looks? These are the type of things that teachers can do in order to be seen as leaders, particularly in that space. And we are closest to the issue, so I think we're more than equipped to make sure that we do that. I know I'm running over time, Roxy, so I want to make sure I open it back up for some Q&A.
I think that everybody is extraordinarily engaged. And then as we spoke, that website that we talked about, at least, I mean, there's some information there already. And then we will have, let's see. You have a lot of questions, so I'll just go ahead. Here we go. And they asked the questions about the 8 can't wait.
Yep.
And I think that some of them were answering some of their own questions, but let's go back.
So that's a national campaign, but
right.
I use that as an example to show how much more informed we need to be as it relates to the implications of African American history and civic engagement.
All right, and there's someone put a link in there. Let me go back up here. Who do you consider to be abolitionist allies? I'm a teacher at a high school. Are other teachers abolitionist allies, or do we look for allies in administration?
All of the above.
Okay.
Abolitionist allies are people who are willing to engage with you in the work. And now that they sit on a continuum. So some of them are going to be decision makers. Some of them are going to be legislators. Some of them are going to be district officials. Some of them will be administrators within the building. Some of them will be your peers. But they sit on a continuum. It's those people who are willing to engage with you in a real authentic way in the work.
Okay, thank you. What construct causes some African American educational leaders, i.e. principals, to downplay the skills of other African American educators at their school or in their department?
Yeah, so within this conversation, what we cannot miss is, we have an internal racial discourse that's going on, right? The more we succumb to the more we abide by, the more we accept the conventional ideas of the status quo, the less we resist that. I think the harder the work is to do. It took me a long time to convince my dean to go out and raise money to give to Black boys to come to the University of North Florida. So the University of North Florida will tout in fall of 2019, the average incoming freshman's GPA was a 4.67, right? Well, I mean, the students I'm recruiting don't have a 4.67. How am I gonna get them in? So I go to admissions and I negotiate a 3.0 grade point average, 1,000 on the SAT, a 21 on the ACT, right? And then that 3.0 is in their core courses, and then they have to be Pell eligible, and an interest in majoring in teacher education. I go out and recruit those kids. It took me a while to convince my dean to go out and raise this money. Like for every cohort, that's $250,000, $300,000 that's going to scholarship. There's a philanthropist cutting those checks. Those philanthropists have to believe in the cause, right? So these Black men, when they come on campus, we're talking about 17, 18-year-old kids. They don't understand the gravity associated with the responsibility of them doing well. They don't understand it. So I have to surround them with a developmental network, right, that's going to support them academically and also support them psychosocially. The difficult part about that is we gotta have the Diane Yindel Hoppies, who's my dean, on our team so that we can collaboratively approach this work. Diane has the relationship with those philanthropists. They trust Diane. Diane trusts me. So it's not like we're asking for anything free. No, these kids that I'm talking about, 4 years from now, in 3 years from now, in 2023, will be walking across the stage and they will be entering these very same classrooms that many of us sit in right now, and they're going to be able to change the game. Who better to teach us to how to more culturally, responsively approach the youth of today than the youth of today?
All right, very good, thank you. Currently, Philadelphia is the only city in the US where passing an African-American history class is mandatory to graduate. Do you see this mandatory status spreading to other cities?
In the socio-political climate today, I absolutely do. As a matter of fact, in a statement that came out from Dr. David Szymanski, who's the president at the University of North Florida, he literally said that every student was going to have to take some type of racial competency courses, right? And I think that also should be extended to faculty and staff as well. So I do see these type of movements being more acceptable and probably more promoted because of the socio-political climate today.
Okay.
Thank you, Roxy. It's 3:07. So
Okay.
we've done well, and everybody's been sitting, and I appreciate
Right.
people still hanging in there. We still have over 200 people who are still
Absolutely.
And Dr. Jameson is going to come back again on Wednesday to kind of wrap up and answer some questions. So I think that this is really, really, really great. We've done an excellent job of bringing people together of like minds. Now is the time for us to do, you know, there's a good book that says there's a season for everything. This is the season for us to get involved and get involved in this particular issue. So I see Tony is still on. Tony, would you like to have some last few words before we, you know, let people go and do their thing? Because I mean, I just appreciate the fact that they hung in there this long.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly. I am just excited about Rudy's presentation. Excuse me, Dr. Jameson's presentation. Being from the Dr. Kelly, being from the east side of Jacksonville, he made us proud. Boy, he made us proud. Dr. Jameson, I just want to give you a nugget on that piece that you were talking about. when we're in front of those funders, just let them know you can't be what you can't see.
That's right.
Hello. Hello, Roxy. You can't be what you can't see. So if they can see it, they can be it. And they see it in Dr. Rudy Jameson. So we need more Dr. Rudy Jameson that can eloquently speak the, as they say, you don't necessarily have to talk the talk if you can just walk the walk. And he's walking it and speaking very loudly. So I was excited about that. Also, Dr. Jameson, I think we need to put the book on our website. It was not about just a Coke and a hot dog, because truly as educators, here was a guy, Rutledge Pearson, that went beyond the classroom. And on the 27th of August, it'll be going viral all across the country because everybody now knows about X Handle Saturday. And they'll know more about it with the presentation. Dr. Kelly wanted to let you know that there will be a program that day going on starting at 12 o'clock in Metropolitan Park. I mean, not Metropolitan, but Hibbing Park there, where the mayor took that statue down the other day. So everything has been great today. I look forward to Sister Hall to the presentations on tomorrow and Wednesday. This is by far has been one of the most exciting summer institutes that we've had in a long time. And again, thank you for all the hard work that you did to put it together. And thank you, Dr. Kelly, for allowing her to use her enthusiasm and excitement to put this together by virtue. I was just really shocked to see how many people that were on the call today on the Zoom. Over 1,000 people had Zoomed in during the course of 12 o'clock to the present time. Again, thank you for the opportunity to come back and share. All right.
Great. Thank you, Senator Hill. And we're going to end up, and again, thank you for your support of us through the years and getting us connected with Dr. Kelly. Now, it's very imperative, Dr. Kelly, I hope it's not too late with the surveys, but we also are going to have, we want you to come out, AAHTFevents.com. What we realized, and Dr. Kelly and I had the conversation, everybody is not utilizing the app, and we understand that. So everything that we have in the app, we're going to make available on this website. You're going to have to give us some time. So by tomorrow morning, everything will be there. The documents, the recordings, everything that we put in the app, we will put on the website. And I think that that will make everybody happy. And also your surveys are there now. So I've gone in and put those surveys on. We needed you to take that pre-institute survey. I think that might still be okay. Again, Dr. Kelly, I'll let you speak to that. But we have a post-session survey. After each, for each of the sessions today, that's Dr. Matayun, Dr. Gibson, Dr. Jameson, Dr. Austin, we have a survey. You will click the same survey link. You will click the same survey link and you can take it multiple times. There's a drop down for the session. So we're asking that you do that. We will be communicating via email blast, via text blast, and via this website. Thank you so much, Dr. Gibson, Dr. Jameson, Dr. Austin, Senator Hill, Dr. Kelly, Camille for handling all the technical things, Dr. Matayun. Thank you for an amazing day, and thank you, audience and registrants, because this could not have happened without you. We ask that everybody have an amazing day. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning. Dr. Kelly, you have anything?
I think you covered it all, my sister.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all. Have an amazing afternoon.